Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Anacortes City Council meeting of November 17th, 2025. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Mr. Franczak, could you take the roll, please?
Mr. Fantini.
Here.
Mr. Young. Mr. Walters.
Here.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Here.
Ms. Moulton.
Here.
Mr. McDougall.
Recording in progress.
Ms. Hubick.
Here.
Thank you.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
I move to excuse Mr. Young.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Cleland McGrath, second by Ms. Hubick to excuse Mr. Young. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, start out as always with the announcements and committee reports. I've got a couple announcements. Parks Commission Neighborhood Parks meeting, that will be November 18th at 6 p.m. That'll be right here in City Council chambers. So that's a Parks Commission Neighborhood Parks meeting. Library, they're having an all-staff in-service day on the 21st of November. So the library will be closed on the 21st. And since we're talking about that for Thanksgiving, that weekend, which unbelievably Thanksgiving is next week, and that they'll start their closure at 4 p.m. on the 26th, and that'll go through the 28th for the Thanksgiving holiday. And also, so you can prepare solid waste holiday schedule, no garbage on Thursday, November 27th, that is Thanksgiving Day, and Friday, November 28th. Thursday customers will be picked up early on Wednesday, the 26th, and Friday customers will be picked up Monday on the 1st. Waste management will follow our schedule as usual for recycling and yard waste. All right, council committee reports. Finance Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. McDougall.
Finance Committee met last Thursday. It was council members Moulton, Cleland, McGrath, myself, and Mr. Hoagland and Ms. Peck. First couple items we discussed were just kind of like sort of ongoing business. The state mandated sort of like processes and procedures audit is in the process of wrapping up. Essentially, it's almost done. We also had a brief discussion of water reconciliations, and really the way this works is the wholesale customers, they basically purchase water at a contracted rate, and they pay upfront kind of like this chunk for like that pre-purchased rate, and then we do a reconciliation every, I think it's 6 months, and then if they've overconsumed, we send a bill to true it up, or if they've underconsumed, we send a credit. So just kind of a discussion of how that all works. The other thing we discussed, which is actually appearing later tonight on the agenda, is the utility tax, the proposed 2% increase. And really, we kind of just discussed like the math around that. So the way it works out, at 2%, we would see an additional roughly $600K in revenue. And that actually breaks down to the refineries, while they consume a lot more water than the ratepayers in the city, they don't, well, have nearly the like sewer or wastewater bill that the consumers or the retail customers have. So essentially that 600K breaks down to about 40% refineries, 60% ratepayers is roughly it. The other piece of math is for every 1% we increase that tax, it's roughly 300K in additional revenue. So if we were to increase it 2% at 600K, if we were to go up 2.5%, that's 750K. That roughly how the math works. The item on our agenda tonight is 2% because that's what the first read had. And that's what I have for Finance Committee.
Questions for Finance Committee? Economic Development Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. McDougall.
Economic Development Committee met last Thursday as well, and that was council members Young, Hubick, and myself, and then Mr. Coleman and Ms. Snyder. And we discussed, actually we covered a few different things. The biggie is the Port West Basin Development Plan and the joint sort of partnership there. Basically, over the next few months, there's kind of like wrapping up of easements and things like that for like the shifting of the roads around that kind of the corner where the dog park meets the essentially the port's property. And then they're expecting a 30% design for the event center by mid-December. And so what that means is once that's in, it'll trigger things to go out to bid for, basically for constructing the event center itself, as well as I believe the port has plans to send bids for hotelier, to like hotel construction as well. So we're still probably not looking at groundbreaking until like sort of either late 2026 or 2027 for that. But we do expect that construction will provide a boost to sales tax funds. And then, of course, the event center itself, the goal itself is to drive economic growth and additional sales tax proceeds as well. Then we discussed a couple other just onesie-twosie items, like basically kind of brainstorming around ideas for generating more economic development around things like maybe a shuttle service for the arts festival, something like that. We discussed also, like, I didn't catch the name of the firm, but there's a firm that we could partner with that would be able to provide like some data analytics for essentially free on ferry traffic and whether or not that traffic is capturable, and to be able to like snag it here in town and achieve some increased sales tax receipts as well. Or maybe capture, say, not necessarily on the day of that ferry visit, but entice the next visit to just come to town instead of go all the way out. So, and that's what I have for that.
All right. Questions for Economic Development Committee? All right. Public Works Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you. The Public Works Committee met at 5 p.m. today. It was Councilmember Walters and me, and also we had staff. We had Interim Public Works Director Logan Lee, Stormwater Director Aaron Esterholtz, and also Wastewater Treatment Plant Manager Brian Walker. And we talked about the pump station that's on the capital facilities plan that went out to bid, and that the winning bid was Strider Construction, who did our combined sewer outfall, so they're very familiar with the project, and this pump station is related to that, to deal with any kind of overflow during major precipitation, rain events. And so there's a necessity of going 20 feet deep for that, which is just really interesting engineering-wise. But that bid came in under the engineer's estimate, and that contract will be coming to council next Monday, the 24th. We spent the bulk of our conversation on the wastewater treatment plant alternatives analysis, which the city hired Brown and Caldwell to do an analysis of all the options, the universe of options, and there are a great many. And the first 2/3 of that contract is complete, and staff is looking forward to bringing the options. They've narrowed it down. They're close to narrowing it down to 6 choices. And this has been an ongoing process for about 10 years, well before I was on council, of what will we do with our incinerator wastewater treatment plant. There are only 3 left in the state. And ours is running extremely efficiently due to the efforts of staff over the years. But there's an estimate of about $2 to $6 million to continue to repair it and to get another 5 to 10 years of life out of it. And regulations are constantly changing. There's a lot going on in the industry. And to replace it, the top end would be about $20 million if we went for the most expensive option. And that would be with pyrolysis and or gasification. So those are really big decisions that will come forward with the consultant and staff to City Council probably after the first of the year. So we'll all be informed about what our choices are, so we can decide what our priorities are, whether it's, greenhouse gas reduction, and there's just so many things, costs, longevity, all those things. So anyway, but that will be a very public, transparent process for council and the public, and I'm looking forward to that, getting a little closer to decisions on that. And then lastly, we talked about 12th and Commercial, the contract modification that's on tonight's agenda, and we'll have a presentation on that shortly. Thank you.
Questions for Public Works Committee? All right, any other announcements or committee reports?
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Fantini?
Two things. One, I just wanted to give a shout out to the Salvation Army. Attended their Red Kettle Bell kickoff on Friday night. It was great. Mayor Pro Tem was there, delivered a few words. It was great to see everybody getting together. I think they raised $112,000, so that's fantastic news. And shout out to Brett and LaShawn for the great work they're doing there. I also did just kind of have a question, because I'm getting asked a lot right now in the community of how, what is going to happen when Mr. Walters' seat becomes vacant. And I didn't know if there was an opportunity at a future meeting to possibly have a presentation on what that process will look like, or kind of the timing of that. Just want to know what I should be telling people.
Yeah, there is a process. At least a couple of us who were on council a while ago, we've been through that process before. We call for applicants, and then the council actually will select that person to fill it. And maybe Ms. Swetnam or Ms. Shue can fill in on a little more detail. But yeah, we have to do that at some point. Ms. Swetnam, you probably recall the process better than I can.
I do recall the process, and I don't remember if there's a specific time frame, but the mayor's correct. The city collects applications, and then the last time that a vacancy was filled, it's been a number of years, those interested individuals submitted written materials and then had an opportunity to come and present their qualifications to council, who then deliberated and made a selection out of the applicants. I'm happy to put together some more specific information for council so you can address questions.
I'd appreciate that. I don't know if there's any shared interest.
I believe the arduous requirements are 1 year of residency within the city limits. I think that's about it. So,
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
I think importantly, the process at the end of the day is up to council, and importantly as well, not up to me.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
I just wanted to add a piece of additional information. So the person will be appointed by council, and then will need to run before the end of the year to keep the seat for the remainder of the term. And so anyone can run at that time as well. And that term will only continue through the end of 2027. So that means so that means that there's going to be another election. So that's just something to keep in mind for people to know.
Great question, Mr. Fantini.
Yeah, thank you. So any more
Mayor Miller?
information?
Ms. Shue.
My understanding, and I know that we're happy to go in and look further at this, but my understanding is that they fill the remainder of the open term, and they do not run after 1 year. So maybe we can check into that.
Yeah, and that's the part. We'll make sure to get that information out there to make sure we're correct on that.
So,
Yeah,
Mayor
go
Miller, as someone who actually went through the process, I was required to run that same year, even though I was appointed in April. I had to run to keep the seat, and then I had to run again when the term was over.
It might depend on the election cycle, but anyway, we'll get it.
Okay,
We'll,
thanks.
we'll get smarter on that and make sure to get that process out as soon as required.
Thank you.
Any other announcements or committee reports? Okay, we're on to item 3D, which is the Lifesaver Award presentation, and this Lifesaver Award is called the Dr. Ron Reichitson. I think I pronounced that correctly, but Chief Harris will correct me on that one, and he'll kick us off with this one. Whenever you're ready, Chief.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Miller, members of council. Earlier this year, 4 of our citizens and our firefighters worked together to bring about a successful outcome to a
Little closer on the, we go through a little closer. Yeah.
Really thought I had it that time. Yeah. Earlier this year, 4 of our citizens and our firefighters worked together to bring about a successful outcome to a cardiac arrest event. The first links in the chain of survival are early recognition of a cardiac arrest, rapid activation of the 911 system, and early and effective CPR. The 4 individuals we're about to recognize performed all of these actions flawlessly. The next links in the chain of survival are early defibrillation and advanced life support medical care. At the time this call occurred on the afternoon of July 1st, all of the on-duty AFD units were already committed to 3 other medical emergencies that had occurred in the previous 20 minutes. Thankfully, our engine company was able to break free from one of those calls and respond immediately. Without the support of you and our citizens in passing Proposition 1, there would have been no AFD unit available, and the closest ALS care would have come from Burlington. Had that been the case, I doubt we would have had the same outcome. So again, thank you. But with that, if I could please have Bonnie Bowers, Maggie Thompson, Mary Kaiser, and Pam Estfold come up, please. Yep, so the Dr. Ron Richardson Award is given for life-saving events as they're nominated. The citation reads, in recognition of your courageous life-saving actions and involvement in the cardiac arrest chain of survival that saved a life on July 1st, 2025. If I get everyone to stay up, please.
Here's that lovely coin. And a grip and grin. We'll look at Sharon and then Emily. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Hi, Mary. It's a wonderful coin and then a nice award. And thank you so much, Sharon. And then Emily. All right. I got this down. Hello, ma'am. Yeah, and then, let's get to all together, and Chief.
Actually, before we do that, can I
yes.
bring up, I think I've seen some of the firefighters that were on the call are here tonight, if they'd come up, please. And also kind of the, I'm going to call the star of the show, Mr. Philip Montgomery is here tonight, and he was on the other end of the CPR.
Here, come on over this way. Go on. Right here. There you go. All right, one more round of applause. Thank you. That was great. All right, well, that was awesome. Next, item 3E. And 3E, this is a swearing in of a firefighter. And Chief Harris, you're still on.
Again, thank you. Tonight I would like to introduce, she has been well coached. I'd like to introduce you to our newest firefighter paramedic, Megan Gard-Lilly. Megan is a lateral transfer who comes to us from the Cedar-Woolley Fire Department, where she has served for the past 11 years. She began with us on October 1st, and as of a few days ago, she has completed her FTO training and is now working on her own. While we don't keep these stats, I'm fairly certain that's the fastest anyone has completed that process, at least in recent memory. We're really looking forward to the quality of service she brings to our system.
All right, and I get to administer the oath, and we'll try with the microphone. And come on, we got to get center. We got center court here. All right, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Megan Gard-Lilly, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States of America, that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States of America, the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington, the ordinances of the City of Anacortes, and faithfully and impartially discharge all duties incumbent upon me as a firefighter for the City of Anacortes Fire Department to the best of my ability, so help me God. Congratulations. All right. Somebody going to pin a badge on you?
Yeah, and then tonight to pin her is her husband, Ron Lilly.
You've seen this before, okay. All right, one picture. And then Chief and I are going to ruin the picture. We're going to ruin the picture. All right, be sure to sign. All right, thank you. That was great. All right, we are moving on to item 4. I'll give a minute for, I know a lot of you want to hang out until we get to the city council procedures discussion later on. So we're going to go with public comment. Item number 4, and this is any opportunity for any member of the public that wishes to address the council on anything that's not on our agenda tonight. I've got a couple of folks that are signed up, so when you sign up, you get to go first, and you get 3 minutes. And please state your name and city you live in for the record. I have signed up David Maynard, I think, and one of the reasons you state the name in case I mispronounce your name and misspell it. So come on up to the microphone, make sure it's on, and the topic is library staff reductions. So whenever you're ready, turn the microphone on at the base. There's a button that says push. There
Got
you go.
it. Thank you very much. And it is pronounced Menard, but I'm used to any other variation, so that's fine.
Thank you.
I live in the city of Mount Vernon, but I work at Pelican Bay Books, and I previously worked at Watermark Books, and I was the manager of the Camino Island Library. I've worked in libraries for over 30 years, so if I don't speak loudly enough, that's why. But I do know how valuable a teen librarian is, and Diana Farnsworth is an exceptional example. Not only does she excel at communicating with teens, but she inspires and encourages them. Anacortes teens deserve the best, and I ask that you consider letting Diana continue to serve Anacortes teens and the Anacortes community at large. In support of Diana, I would have dyed my hair blue, but cooler heads prevailed. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, I have Katie Eastman in Library Teens. So it's okay. We won't take that away from your 3 minutes.
Hello. I have been a psychotherapist for over 40 years, specializing with teens and families in trauma. 6 years ago, in this very room, after 2 teen suicides in Anacortes, a group of teenagers stood right here and told us, what do they need? They said they need a safe place to talk, to learn, to be themselves without pressure, performance, or evaluation. That eliminates sports, arts, anything where they have to be something somebody tells them they've got to be good at. That place became the library. The person who stood up and said, yes, we need this, we're listening, was Diana Farnsworth. And if you think we don't still need it, according to a 2025 Peace Health report, 1 in 6 10th graders reported having suicidal thoughts in the past year. 2 out of 5 8th graders say they're unable to stop or control worrying during the previous 2 weeks. That's right now, folks. We have taken away the heart of Anacortes. A library is the heart of any community. Why? Because it's where young families come to where nobody has to have a label. They don't have to be a certain religion. They don't have to fit into a certain category. There are 2 buildings that you go to as a young family. You go to the school and you go to the library. We cut the heart of Anacortes. And so I have an alternative. I don't want to stand here with those teenagers again. And we will if we don't do something. And if we don't get that teen center moving. And the teen center doesn't have to be a place. It can be an advisory group of teens with stakeholders from different organizations who come together and fund a position for a teen advocate in this city. A teen advocate who takes responsibility for making sure that our teenagers get their needs met, that they don't have to perform to get them met. There could be a space open from 3 to 6. That's what they said they need. They need a place to go after school where they don't have to be labeled. I want to see that happen. I will work with anyone who wants to help me. I intend to go to stakeholders throughout the city to make it happen, because reality is, if we don't, we're going to pay the consequences. And every single one of us in this room is going to hear of a teenage suicide again. And they've gone down considerably, but they're still happening. And if you doubt that, it took 7 kids before those two girls brought our attention. I don't want to see that happen again. And as a mental health provider, I will tell you that the feedback from the kids who went to the library was stellar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Robert Dickinson, and the topic is parking limitations.
Hi there.
Name and city you live in, please.
Robert Dickinson. I live at 1905 8th Street here in Old Town. And I'm here tonight to get a clarification about parking. This reared its ugly head in the western end of Old Town this past week because we've got a guy who's there, as of right now, still there, who's decided to make the western end of Old Town his place. He's planted the flag. He's living in his vehicle. I know this has been an issue on T Avenue for a couple years. I've been here for several years. This has never been an issue right in my little part of Old Town. So apologies if this is covering ground you're all very familiar with. I had to get very familiar with it this week. We've got a guy who, again, living out of his vehicle. My interactions with him, he is not all there. It's a concern. He's got some serious mental health issues, and told me he likes it there and that he likes the views and he wants to stay. And I got the police involved. He was right out in front of my house for a couple days. He was on 9th for a couple days. Currently, as of 30 minutes ago, he's on 10th between J and K. The cops were great. Huge shout out to Anacortes PD. Super responsive, very professional, very polite. Loved it. However, they told me 72 hours as long as the guy's not committing a crime. And that blew me away. Are you serious? 72 hours, he's got to move a block, and then the time starts again, and I guess he could just do this forever. I dug into the municipal code, found what they were referring to. It's 10.12.32, right? There's your general time limit for parking. Right above that, though, 10.12.31, line G, it's unlawful, and I'll quote it here, to park for use as a place of abode on any portion of a street or right-of-way. I'm looking for some clarification, and I'm just wondering if we have a line here in our code that we're just choosing to not enforce. It seems totally nuts that this guy could just do this forever. I would hate to see anybody hurt. There's kids everywhere in this neighborhood. We don't know who this guy is. Again, he's definitely got some mental health issues, and I'm concerned. That's what I'm seeking tonight. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you. We'll definitely take a look at it. First time it's worked its way to my attention, so we'll take a look at it. Thank you. All right. Anybody else wish to address the council this evening on anything that's not on our agenda? We do have a number of items that are open for public comment. Okay, we will move on to item number 5, which is our consent agenda, items 5A through C. Council.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. McDougall.
Move to approve items A through C on the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McDougall, a second by Ms. Hubick to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are on to item 6. Item 6 is public hearings, and our first one 6A is a public hearing on the 2026 operating budget. And this is a discussion item, and Mr. Hoagland's already there, ready to kick it off. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, members of the audience. Before you officially open the public hearing, I did want to go through a couple of items to point out that have changed in the draft budget since the mayor's budget message to what we currently have in the draft budget. This is an overview of the current draft, and then looking at the year-to-date 2025 budget, and then the 2025 draft budget. These are the areas that have changed. So when the mayor did his budget message, the budget draft was at $114.8 million. It's currently at $115.4 million, difference of $685,000. So we have a few items, line itemed here, that have changed. So a lot of it is just housekeeping. This $30,000 is related to facilities. That was in the facilities budget, got moved. Got moved to the sewer budget. This $250,000 in the storm budget. This aligned the what was in the operating budget to the CFP for those two projects. This $35,000 is related to this $30,000 that got moved, and the adjustment was made by $5,000 when that change was made. This next one, this $270,000 in the sewer fund. This represents work in the capital arena that won't be accomplished in 2025 that we were initially expecting to get accomplished, so that's rolling into 2026. There was just a worksheet error that we corrected, another minor error that we corrected, a $2,000 error, and then this last item in fiber, this again aligns the capital work that we had identified in the budget to what was in the CFP, and this is all fully funded by a grant. So this is, again, kind of a reminder. We've gone through the initial reductions that we made in putting this draft budget together. A few weeks ago when we showed this to council, this was in a waterfall chart. It's the same information, just line itemed out now. What this doesn't show is the assumptions on the revenue budget that were also put into place to bring the revenue and expenditure budgets into alignment. And here's where we are tonight. So public hearing tonight on both the operating budget and the CFP. And all things being equal, we'll come back in a week for council to fix the final budget and final CFP. So I will point out that there are ad requirements or notice requirements for both the CFP public hearing and the public hearing for the operating budget. We've met those requirements 2 weeks consecutive in the local newspaper. And Mayor, what I was going to suggest is perhaps opening the public hearing tonight, and after any public comment taken, closing it tonight, and a reminder to council and the public that we do continue to take any public comment at any point during the budget process. So with that, Mayor.
All right. So you want me to say the words opening the public hearing, and then this is the time for the public. But like we said, this is a formality to make sure we stay in the rules of our publication. But I know council's going to take comments throughout the process. But I will plan on closing the public hearing tonight, because ultimately it is council's work to make it happen, but I know they'll continue to take input. So with that, it's a public hearing. Any member of the public wish to comment on this item on the budget? Yeah, come on up. And just to make sure, we're going to take separate on the CFP as well? Okay.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, my name is Linda Martin. I live in Anacortes. I thought it might be helpful for the council to take a look at a budget from the point of view of just a normal citizen, person like me. And I've always found that when you find something that's complex, it's best to make it a little simpler. So I have something for you that I'll give to you to ponder yourselves, but I wanted to just explain what it is and how my thinking, just as a normal citizen. I took Mr. Hoglin's handout that he had a couple weeks ago, and I looked it over pretty carefully, and I thought, well, if I were just looking at this, first thing I would look at is the last regular year that you've had a budget. So that was 2024, because 2025 isn't over yet. So I took those numbers, and they're on my sheet by department, and I thought, well, what would be in a tough budget year, what would be the inflation factor that I would have to put in there? I chose 3%. You know, you can argue good or bad, but I took the 2024 actual, what people actually spent, added 3% to it, and then I compared, and that number became the what I would consider the main, this is what people should be asking for, this is what the budget should be. And then I looked at what actually is in the budget, and in the proposed budget. And I found that there's some real winners and losers in this budget. Some of the losers have been explained, but for example, the library is really losing in this way, just looking at it, you know, and I understand I don't know everything, but the library is losing about 13% in this budget. The museum took the biggest hit. They're losing about 60%. But there were some other things that I was surprised. The police are increased by about 13%. Parks and Recreation increased by about 19%. The cemetery, it was in the handout that Mr. Hoagland gave us, that's increasing for 27%. I was surprised that Human Resources is increasing. So take 2024, add an inflation factor, and then compare that number to the 2026 budget. I'll give it to you so you can see how I figured it out. But and Mr. Hoagland, finance went from 996,000, added inflation factor, about 1.2 million, and compare that to the actual allocated budget of almost 2 million, that's up 87%. Again, I know that I don't know everything, I don't know all the intricacies, but making it simple and taking a look, I'm hopeful that this is helpful to you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anybody else on the budget portion? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the capital facilities plan. Unless you tell me otherwise, Mr. Hoagland.
Yes.
Because we're going to have council's going to engage here in a minute.
Yep.
Well, I guess I should just ask council. Do you have anything you want to add at this point, council? All right.
I promise this would be a little bit awkward when we're talking about this.
It is every time.
Yeah. So I had those, few items that I showed related to the budget. I don't have a same summary for the CFP. The next two items under other business is the ordinance for both the operating budget and then the CFP. And all four of these items kind of work together, the public hearing for the operating budget, CFP, and then the ordinance for the budget and CFP.
But that's where we hope to have the meat of the discussion with council and still open for public comment. Yeah. Okay. So are we good to move to 6B at this point?
Yes,
and
please.
6B and the public hearing, which is the capital facilities plan. because I'm going to have to close the hearing on both of those. So I want to make sure that if any member of the public wants to come up and talk about the capital facilities plan, this is the time. And it looks like, oh, come on back up. Thanks for helping us move this along awkwardly.
Just one quick comment on the capital facilities, and maybe you've already caught it, but I looked in the museum, capital facilities, it's got the event center in there, 8 million, and it's also in the planning department at 8 million, just at least in the one that you gave us.
Okay, we'll definitely take a look at that. Okay, this is the point where I believe the finance director wants me to close the public hearing unless there are no more comments on the public hearing for the budget and the capital facilities plan. All right, so I'll close the public hearing, and now we will move on to item 7A and probably 7B, which is ordinance 5009 2026 operating budget. And this is a discussion item only. And Mr. Hoagland. Now I got you where I think you wanted to be.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Mayor. So this is where the draft currently resides, draft budget. So total of 115.4 million. We've gone through the public works departments, gone through the governmental funds, and I'm happy to try and address any issues or questions that council may have before we move this forward. So again, the schedule that we have in place is the public hearing tonight. Public hearing is now closed. I'll bring back any changes that council may direct tonight and bring back next week on the 24th to fix the final budget. And that's the final step for the operating budget that I have in place, other than anything council directs.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini.
Sorry if this is a dumb question. I don't see a fund on here for LTAC. Is that housed under something?
Yes,
different?
that's a great question. That's Fund 135 called the Tourism Fund.
Okay, so we've talked about before that there's like 1.2 million in that fund,
Yes.
but it
Yes.
only says 596 there.
Right. So what this is illustrating is the expenditure and revenue budget that we have set in place for this fund. So the 1.5 million is an estimate of the cash reserves that we have in place in the tourism fund. So it doesn't show on this ordinance. This is just illustrating the expenditure and revenue budget that we're asking council to adopt.
So is it fair, does that mean that this number is basically what we will have at the end of 2026? Or what, I guess I'm kind of confused at how we get to 596. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this is what we're planning on spending next year out of that fund. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
Just to take one department, the last one that we heard during public comment, finance does have a big jump in expenditures for 2026, but also a big jump in expenditures for 2025. And it seems to me that one of the reasons for that is professional services, which you go from, in 2024, around $100,000 to $730,000, and that's assumedly for the ERP system.
Correct. Yeah.
We're replacing the software program that runs everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But for 2026, we are only budgeting 335, and year-to-date actuals on the ERP line item, the professional services, are still pretty low. Do we expect to spend a lot more on that during 2025?
So the reason we have the big increase in finance for fiscal year 2026 is when we have an inter-fund transfer out of the general fund, the way the BARS number structuring works out is that transfer comes through the finance department. So what we have budgeted next year is the $700,000 transfer into parks for that parking lot project.
Yes, I see that separately, but I was still asking about the ERP. My question on the ERP was, it doesn't look like you've spent that much on it this year, although we budgeted this year to spend a lot.
Yeah.
are we still on track to spend? Well,
Another-
how much are we on
Yeah,
track to spend during 2025?
Yeah, well, when we put the budget in place for the ERP, we were making our best guess on what we knew at the time. We know now that we're going to be spending much less for fiscal year 2025 than what we had budgeted, and we expect to spend less than that next year as well. And additionally, we've better parsed out our cost between the finance department from what we're going to be spending on one-time professional services costs with the IT department on some of those costs related to, software and hardware that need to be spent to support that project next year.
Oh, okay, so some of the ERP will be paid for out of other departments?
Correct.
Other line items? Okay. Yeah, the $700,000 that appears in the 2026 budget for simply the transfer for the parking lot restroom it is one of those things that really drives you crazy because, it would be nice to be able to compare the finance department's budget from year to year as a relatively steady thing, but then when you have big transfers like that, it just throws it all off.
No, absolutely.
At least at the department aggregate level.
Yeah, no, and I understand that's the frustration, and our capital spending in general causes a lot of budget frustration. It prevents us from really being able to look at the bottom line from year to year and see what that changes without considering what those one-time capital charges are, throughout the budget.
Outfall project, that's
Exactly.
multi-million-dollar outfall project that goes over 3 budget cycles. It does make it really difficult.
Yeah.
But
Mayor Miller.
Mr. McDougall.
Mr. Hoagland, I'm looking through the various handouts. Actually, I'm curious about the opioid settlement funds, and if that's, clearly there's not a line item on the ordinance itself, but there's a handout that has revenues, but it doesn't have a specific line item. Where would that be, I guess, classified under?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So what we had identified during our budget meetings for use of that money was $80,000 to pay for half of the school resource officer in fiscal year 2026, and then $30,000 to pay for the contract with the Anacortes Family Center. So that $110,000 is really what we had identified for use out of those cash reserves in this fiscal year 26 budget.
Is there an actual revenue item for the settlement fund? And can you remind me what that dollar number was?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So that'll be coming out of existing cash reserves. So when you look at the fund balance category for the general fund, I think we have something like 1.3 million in fund balance identified. Might have that number wrong, but at any rate, we have some number of revenue identified as fund balance use, and that fund balance is actually what the cash reserves are. So that $110,000, the $700,000 transfer to the Parks Fund for the parking lot, both of those items would be coming out of existing cash reserves. So that's a planned use of those reserves in our existing draft.
And then the actual opioid settlement funds that go into cash reserves, that's not specifically accounted for, at least on the handouts, but that was about $350K?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what we would do in that case, if council approves this draft as is, with that existing allocation of opioid monies, once we posted that budget, we would do a journal entry to move that cash out of the opioid cash line item in the general ledger, and we would move that into regular operating cash in the general ledger. So all that would take place kind of behind the scenes.
Kind of after. Okay, thank you. I know that there's been several asks of the opioid settlement funds, and we also got the presentation last week from the county and the STAR group, and I was really pretty, I guess, convinced on the benefits of that particular proposal. And I know that the county's ask or proposal was, could the cities allocate 80% of their fund, I guess the settlement fund, to that project, and then the other 20% to whatever else. I don't know that we're going to make it to 80%, but like personally, I would love to see us get as close as possible because I think that project is very strategic and very beneficial toward basically, and fundamentally what the settlement funds, like the intent of the funds are for, is to address opioid addiction and abuse. So that's my personal sense, is I would like to try to find a way to get as close to 80% as possible funding that particular request. So thank you.
Yeah, and I don't want to try to simplify it too much, but as Mr. Hoagland stated, we have 110,000 that we've identified in the draft. So whatever's left over, I think that's kind of the sense that I heard from council. But again, I think I said a couple weeks ago, we can't do a survey monkey. This is, we're just trying to capture what council is doing, and I took some notes from that. And I didn't see clearly I didn't see council was interested in putting it towards the range, so we didn't put that in there. I wasn't quite sure how we handled the library parks. I think maybe a small amount there, but again, I think the rest could certainly go to meet the request of the county and the North Star project. But hopefully that stimulates some conversation.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini.
Just kind of a question. Is that going to come, I'm assuming that's coming back to us again for a decision at some point? Or no?
Well, we would have to do some sort of interlocal to move the money over there. But ultimately, the decision at hand is what's in the budget now. And what's in the budget now is $80,000 for SRO and $30,000 for AFC. So again, if you're, and so sorry, I can't do that math in my head. And I don't have the dollar amount, but that money is set aside differently. Mr. Hoag, the finance is accounting for that money differently, but whatever that math is, it's 350,000 minus 110,000 ish.
About a third, 35%, as opposed to 20%, I guess.
So what's in the budget right now is the school resource officer, the Anacortes Family Center at 30,000, and no?
No, I'm making sure that he's going to answer that one because I want to
perfect. I guess just one more time, if you could just tell me what is in there currently.
Yeah, so the draft that we had, the use of that money that we have in mind for this draft budget is 110,000, 80,000 for the SRO, that'd be the half that the school district would, normally pay, and then 30,000 for the AFC social worker contract. So,
okay, thank you.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
In our finance committee meeting, we talked about kind of the significant changes that are being proposed for 2026 budget, and that first quarter in which we will really be able to monitor how those significant changes have impacted our budget, and then also monitor our revenue. So I guess my concern is, yes, we need those two things included in the budget, and yes, I understand that we have to have a balanced budget, which means we have to identify where they're being paid, how they're being paid for. But at least as a council member, I am very hesitant to commit that much, the $110,000, that high of a percentage of the opioid funds to those two items. So if there's a way that we can make a note that as we're watching our revenue come in and how our modifications are impacting the overall budget, if there could be a note made that I would prefer to spend, I don't know, a smaller amount of that opioid funds, whether it's 50,000 or 30,000 or whatnot. So as we get to the second quarter and third quarter, if we do end up having enough general funds to just cover, I know the SRO is, and we're only committing to 1 year, so school district, be aware that we do not have the funds for the following year. We are trying to make sure that we are able to keep that really important program going, but it's a partnership with the school district that hopefully we can use general funds and really preserve that opioid money to a program that no one wants to really think they're going to have to use or have close family members or friends access, but we need to make sure that the Star Center and then hopefully the other two asks, but specifically the Star Center, is available within our community for the folks who ultimately will have to use it at some point in their lives. And so I guess what I'm getting at is is it possible, and if anyone else on council feels that, can we make some kind of note that we would like to try to preserve as much of those opioid funds for further discussion with the full county North Star program?
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you. I'd like to second Ms. Cleland McGrath's sentiments. I think that if it's at all possible, I would also like to secure those opioid funds more for the intention. I know that there's leeway in how we are able to use them, but I think in the spirit and in the highest effectiveness, working together as a county and with the other communities in it is the best way to have the largest, most effective impact. So if we could do that, I think that would be fantastic, that we're agreeing we're going to pay the $30,000 to the AFC and we're going to pay the $80,000 extra this year to the school district. I think that that's fair. But again, I would like to see that come out of general fund depending on what our revenues and expenses are going forward. And I would really appreciate, I know this information has been given to me at some point, but to have a line item of how much opioid funds we've had since the beginning, like a simple spreadsheet. This is what we've gotten year to year, and this is what we spent year to year, so we actually know the exact amount that we have at all times and exactly what we spent them on. Because my fear is that as these get absorbed into the general fund or reserves, we just lose track of them. We're like, oh yeah, there's money there, and then there it goes very easily. So I want us to account for, so we all know what those amounts are.
And just to clarify, we do have a separate cash line set up in the general ledger that when we get that opioid money, it gets receipted into that line item. So it's kept tracked separately from the rest of the cash. So we can get that for you.
That's great too. And then to input when we spent for Zeke, the sniffer dog, and when we, just so we have that in front, easily accessible at all times. Because I think it's really important to the community also. We've heard from people repeatedly and more than one, whether it's conversationally or via email, and there's a lot of care and concern because, as Ms. Cleland McGrath said, a lot of us know and love people who have needed or are going to need these services that are so vital to survival.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
I think on November 3rd, we did get such a slide that indicates we've only spent $15,000 total so far, and that was only on Zeke, the dog. But what I'm unclear about from that slide is if we have a projected amount that, remaining for 2026 and then projected allocations for 2027 through 2040. What I'm unclear about, does that include the next settlement that I'm reading about in the news already?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ms. Swetnam, I know you've been working that spread. She works the future settlement numbers, and Mr. Hoagland works the current.
So the spreadsheet that has the future numbers does include the two most recent settlements that are being finalized right now, the Purdue and then the generic manufacturers settlements. So those are in there, and I believe Rhonda provided that in your packets as well.
And so I can confirm that what we presented on the 3rd does include and match to everything that we have from legal.
Okay, good. So then that's helpful. And then I'm a little bit unclear, though, what Ms. Cleland McGrath is suggesting that we do. I concur that we should be spending this money on opioid treatment.
ideally.
I guess the way I understood it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it sounds like maybe we're okay with spending $30,000 in opioid dollars to fund the 2026 budget, but you would prefer us find an alternative general fund source for the $80,000 for 2026. Is that correct?
I mean,
not.
if
Go ahead.
that's possible, I mean, we had a lot of discussion about, how the 2026 budget was developed, and it was a significant work by the mayor, by staff, by directors, but at the same time, looking at 2027, we realistically may it be in just as difficult of a position or more difficult position. And so I got a little nervous. And then I somehow made our finance director a positive that he thought maybe things will get better. And we should really monitor for the first couple quarters, because I was thinking like, it's just, next year's going to be even harder than this year. So out of those conversations, it became a discussion point, at least from a staff level or a director's level, that maybe, we're making major cuts. Hopefully those cuts have a positive impact, and we will see things turn around and improve. So I guess I'm saying, yes, worst case scenario, we have this opioid money available to cover it, but if possible, we can look at the second quarter and third quarter, and maybe we will be able to just fund that out of general fund and preserve the opioid money to commit to some larger thing. Maybe not 80%, I don't know what, but, and I also, just so whatever we're able to, that as a council later on this next year, after hearing more discussion as a North Star county-wide project, that we're able to commit what we can. I also would want to clarify, because I have heard from folks that watched the last meeting about the request for $500,000, and I said that was, I think, a request from the county that was just to give us a dollar amount, but by no means do I think we have that much, a quantity of that size available. So I just want to clarify, I'm not expecting us to go to that amount, but that's hopefully answers your question.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
Well, I can definitely concur. We don't have 500. We only have 365 available. But I think that the question is, how much would we propose to tell the county that we would sign an interlocal agreement for? Because they want to know up front what they can invest in the North Star startup, or the Star Center startup. And I think if we spent $30K of the opioid funds on Family Center and $15K on Zeke, the dog, then we'd be spending about 88% of the total on North Star, unless, we added to other expenses, but which is pretty good, almost 90%. And I think that helps make up maybe a little bit for Cedar Woolley, which may not be investing at the same rate that the other cities are.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
So is that a suggestion that we give the county 88% of our, did I hear that correctly, or am I misinterpreting?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
I was not actually suggesting a percentage. I was suggesting a fixed number. And we get more later, right? We get $50,000 a year in succeeding years. But just of the amount that we have the amount that we have available at the end of this year is going to be $365,000, according to the spreadsheet. We've already spent 15 of that on the dog. So if we spent another $30K on the Family Center, and the remainder of the available funds from 2025 on the Star Center, then we would be spending about 88% of our total available funds, opioid funds at the moment, on the Star Center.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini?
So are you proposing that we change the budget to remove the school resource officer funding? Because that's coming from opioid funds.
No, I don't think I haven't heard that from anybody on
Okay.
council, that I think that the debate that you all are having, which is a good one, is how we're going to source that revenue. And the suggestion, because I tried to do the Survey Monkey a couple weeks ago with what council members were supportive of that and which weren't. I didn't quite get a majority, but as of now, we've put 80,000 being sourced from opioid money. Again, that opioid money is somewhat restrictive. I also thought I heard from council maybe 4 weeks ago that we wanted to get a number from the county, and obviously I guess they came when I wasn't here and said, oh, that number's 500,000. But I would maybe suggest that council comes up with that number, knowing what the Star Center investment might be, because again, I think we all agree that that's an important one to participate with. And we're just trying to we have to put revenue to every expense, but that opioid money is a separate line item. So right now, again, I would love to have council debate and come up with a solution of how much revenue of that opioid revenue do they want to put towards the county. I think that would help, because then if not, then finance is going to have to go back and
Mayor Miller.
Yeah. Please.
Am I
Ms. Hubick.
missing the money that Parks and Museum and Library requested, or was that not put in the budget?
Was not put in.
Yeah,
the
that was not in the current draft budget. So
Okay.
that was a proposal that they had put together, looking forward, but it's not actually incorporated into the fiscal year 26 budget.
Okay, I would make a push for that. I know it doesn't seem like a lot. I know at the same time it does seem like a lot when there's a lot of money to be stretched very thinly across a lot of different places. I also know that it's very difficult to look at two different groups of people, because this is looking at prevention of youth before they get to the point to where they need the services that the Star Center can provide. And it's really hard to look at someone suffering from withdrawal and comparing them to a teenager that may just be popping a Xanax for 2 from a parent's cabinet. But that person could end up as the person that needs the Star Center in 15, 20 years. I just feel like youth prevention goes so much farther. I just found some numbers that's from Johns Hopkins that says that every dollar put into youth prevention programs have an $18 return on investment for every dollar put into it. And everybody says it. I don't think that $15,000 is a lot, but it is a lot. And so I just want to make an ask for that. I think that, and we've said it before up here, it's come out of everybody's mouth. If any department can stretch that $5,000, it'll be museum, parks, and library. And those are also departments that we've heard mean a lot to people in the community, so I think they could be trusted, probably to a group of people that need to have that trust the most.
So what do you think the easiest way for council to get to consensus on this one? And I'm talking to council. Set aside, figure out how much you want to put to the Star Center, and then work your way back from that, or the other way around? Open to
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Fantini.
So after the presentation from the county last week, I walked away with a few more questions, and maybe, I know Councilmember Moulton, Walters, you've been to a lot of the meetings, so you might be able to answer this. I think it is great that we're going to come together as a county, and I am supportive of giving an amount of money to the county to do that. My question kind of becomes, there's 60-some beds, I think, that are going to be available at that Star Center. Are those beds allocated to municipalities? So for instance, like if we're going to give all of Anacortes' money, or 80% of Anacortes' opioid money to the Star Center, because the opioid money coming to us, as I understand it, is to help those in our community. how do we guarantee that there's going to be availability in those beds, or do we just say, well, I guess it's just the first 64 people that get in there? I guess that was my thing, is I'm trying to pair together the ask with what is good for Anacortes. And for me, a big part of it, again, is I want to do that project. I want to give that project money, but I also want to make sure that if someone from Anacortes needs to go over there and there's nobody from Anacortes in those 64 or 60, however many beds it is, was that a good use of our funds? Yes, it's helping other community members in Cedro, Woolley, or Mount Vernon, but is that the best use of our funds? Like, is there any mechanism in place to offer
I'll try to take that one, since I've been with the North Star Group from the beginning. That's certainly the intention, is it for it to be available specifically for the 24/7 drop-off for law enforcement when the emergency room or the jail is not the right place. But no, there's not a written mechanism yet in place for that. Like we have, I know maybe it's a bad example, but the jail, we do have, complete, agreements and cost sharing and all that. But I do believe, working with all the other elected officials in the county, that is the intention, for it to be available. So, but, yeah.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
In response to your suggestion, that we pick a percentage or a number or work backward or work forward, for me, I think the defining principles are, one, we should be spending the opioid settlement money on directly related opioid functions, which would clearly include the Star Center, which arguably includes the Family Center, which I do not think really directly includes SRO. Because SRO does drugs, but not necessarily what we're talking about here with the opioid settlement money. But then the second principle being that we not supplant existing money. And so the Family Center money, like, we are currently spending general fund revenue on the Family Center, and we would be supplanting that. On the other hand, we're running out of money. So maybe we are willing to sacrifice one of those principles in order to make all this balance. But that leads me to believe that, or to argue that we should be spending the money on Star Center and Family Center, not on SRO. And in response to the other question, I don't mean to defund the SRO, but that we find other funds in the budget for it. I don't think we should pursue the museum, library, parks proposal for the 15K or 75 over 5 years, because I think what the community is going to ask us to do there is going to be different than what they're proposing right now. I think we heard that we need to replace the teen center function at the library, and that's a really high priority thing to do. And I don't know what that looks like going forward. Maybe it's not even at the library. Maybe it's not funded by the city. Maybe it's completely different from what we had before. But I think that the community and the city is going to have to play a role, does need to come together to fix that. And so the 15K proposal, I think, maybe has been overtaken a little bit by events, and now we need to shift gears that way. Also, it maybe fails another test of, is it supplanting existing money or not? Because we're cutting parks, museum, and library budgets. So that would make me weigh in favor of not pursuing that. But I think in 2026, we are going to need to find ways to get more money or more value out of parks, museum, and library to help fill that gap for teens. But I think we're going to have to be maybe even more creative than those departments already have been with this proposal. So the upshot of that, all that, I think, is we should commit to 30K for the Family Center out of this money, and basically the rest of this year's pot of money to the Star Center, and look for options within the budget to fill SRO differently, somehow, from another pot of money.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. McDougall?
Do we know, like, is there a date when we need to make some sort of dollar commitment to the county?
I don't,
Is it end of year?
that's what they have asked for, the end of the year.
Okay. Got it.
Same
we're-
time as our budgets do.
Right.
So,
Okay.
you know, that's why we're trying to weave this into the budget to help it make sense.
I see, we have roughly 350K available after the 15 for the police dog. So that 350K, and there's 110 for the family center and the SRO officer. In theory, that takes us to 240K, which is not 80%, it's more like 60, 65%. So there's basically a $40,000 to $45,000 gap in there. I don't have a solution for that yet because I really want to fund the SRO, obviously, and the family center. You know, if we come out, by April, if we're 40,000 ahead, like we can go 80% on the Star Center. If we're not, maybe we go at 240K to the Star Center and that's all we can do.
Yeah, again, if council makes that direction that we're not going to use the revenues for the SRO, you know, my finance team is going to have to go back and figure out what's going to give on that. So,
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Thank you. Sorry to open up this can of worms, everyone.
A new can of worms?
I
Okay.
don't know. No, not a new one.
Okay.
Just
No, we're good.
that's just happening. So I guess I go back to, is there some way we can just make a note memorializing the fact that if things turn out better than expected, that we will try to fund try to give, preserve the opioid money towards some of the other things. Whether or not it's even 80% to the county, I think even if it's whatever's preserved, we can have a further discussion if that makes the most sense. My inclination is if there's really that dollar amount being requested to the county, I would be inclined to suggest, hey, this is the dollar amount we have, with the understanding that we have to commit this $110,000 out of the opioid funds because of our worst case scenario. We can't balance the budget otherwise and pass a 2026 budget. I think the county can understand based on their discussions that they've had on their personal budget, the county budget, in the last few days. And then if things go okay, we can pull some of that back. I think the SRO is, the school resource officer is pretty directly connected to this opioid funds and the goals set forth based on what we've heard from the police chief and how that position interacts in like the three different pots of students. Either, they're getting in trouble, they're about to get in trouble, they have a hard home life, or they have no other interactions with the police other than this situation. So I think that they're also intervening, that position intervenes before things get to the point where the law enforcement has to be involved and things go on people's records. So I think that to me is a really important thing, as is the AFC. And the dual purpose dog. So I don't quite understand how we could find the $80,000 in the budget between now and when the budget has to be approved. So that's why I request that we make a note of it. And if things start getting positive, come on, Steve, you said things could get better. That happens.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Hubick.
The funding to the SRO out of general funds, would that take, Mr. Hoagland, next year a budget amendment?
No. So if we were to use the opioid money, we would just do a journal entry to move that cash within the general fund cash from the opioid line to the operating budget. I don't know if that answers the question directly, but
That just kind of had an I was just trying to figure out a way to help facilitate the reminders,
Well-
because we do end of the quarter budgets adjustments, we do very specific things like this, so I was just trying to.
I was
you
thinking, by the
some
way,
help.
it's easier the other way around, because in the past, we would get quarterly bills from the school district. So it works that would have been a good way if it worked that way, but since it's our own money paying ourselves, but I understand that concept.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So the discussion about monitoring cash flow through the next, the first quarter of 2026, we can certainly do that, and I'm happy to do that. I guess that would be, dependent on whether the county is okay with a soft answer on the amount of funding that the city is going to provide. But we can certainly do that and revisit this, March, April of 2026.
Mayor Miller?
Yes.
So I also think that it would be it could be reasonable, or council should have this discussion of maybe we're just going to commit funds towards the Star Center and the other two transitional housing models that they would also like to go out for an RFP for. Maybe that, we can say we don't know how much we're able to commit to that, at least for a little bit of time. Going back to what Mr. Fantini, his concern when it comes to whether or not these funds that are specifically for Anacortes, the Anacortes community, whether or not they're going to be really utilized by Anacortes folks. I think that when we've had some other discussions, and it came up at our last North Star meeting with all the cities and counties, was the fact that currently they have 16 beds. So they have 16 beds. So if you were in crisis and the police come and they say, hey, do you want to go to jail, or are you willing to go to this place? They can go there right now. Once the Star Center is completely up and running, then after that short period, which again, I am not an expert in this, once the Star Center is up and running, then those beds of 16, when the time limit is up, then those patients can move to one of the additional beds once it's up and running. I think it's important to remind the public that this money is really so that they can hire the 75 staff members, because you can't not have it fully staffed. You don't know what type of either co-occurring, or there's kind of 3 types of patient, and they all have very different needs. And if the facility is not staffed adequately, they cannot accept those patients. So this is really to get it up and running, at which point, if everything continues to work as expected and based on the models from Whatcom County and I think Spokane, then Medicaid will kick in and insurance will kick in and continue to be self-sustaining. While I do think, yes, I actually asked one of the commissioners, is there a way that we have preference for Skagit County residents? In reality, that's probably not feasible, because of the fact that we're sending our Skagit County residents to Spokane and to Whatcom and up and down the I-5 corridor looking for beds wherever they can go. And I've heard anecdotally from our paramedic, community paramedic, and then our outreach, or our social work in the past that we support through the AFC grant, that they're on the phone calling as they're driving up and down the I-5 corridor. And when they find out that the patient has these additional co-occurring challenges, they may say, you're outside the door, but we can't take you for this reason, because you have this additional needed support, and they don't have the capacity to accept a patient that has that. So having the facility in Skagit County with the goal of addressing kind of those 3 major buckets of challenges to get that full detox is important. Maybe does not always only go to Skagit County residents, but will greatly improve the chances of our community getting the resources they need in a very timely manner. And those 16 beds, the goal is that those 16 beds, there's always something available, because they need to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You have such a small time when someone is willing to take the offer of some really intense treatment. So I agree. I kind of was hoping there was some way to be like, hey, we get this number of beds, but that's probably not reasonable. And I just think it's important that we keep repeating this for the public, because we've sat in a lot of meetings, but even it takes me quite a few times to hear it before I remember it and really process it.
All right, so I heard 240 for the Star Center. That would, I mean, yeah, we kind of need, ultimately, I kind of need some council direction on this one, because, you know, you can only debate this for so long. You're going to have to make a decision. And
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini?
I'm good with that plan.
Okay.
I would like to say, though, that as we're hoping for things to get better in the year, I think Ms. Hubick made a really good point about the funding going to the kids at the library and the outreach and that, and how valuable that is. So I don't want us to lose track of that as well. If there's an opportunity at some point next year to fund that, whether it's through opioid settlements or not, I think that is a really worthwhile program.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Hubick?
And I want parks, and I want museum, and I want library to keep asking for it if they don't get it the first time, and keep asking for it, and keep asking for it, and keep asking for it, because this money is going to keep coming in.
They're good about that.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters?
So what I understood is that we have 365K available at the end of the year. 110 would be budgeted, or is budgeted in the preliminary budget for AFC and SRO. So that would leave 255. And that would be about 70% of our available opioid money after the drug dog. So less than 70%, including the drug dog.
Yeah, we can double check that math, but it's pretty darn close. Okay. All right. Thank you. Good discussion. All right. What else do we need to have council talk about for the budget? Other questions and concerns?
Yeah, anything that council needs to know to have a high enough comfort level to adopt this budget, we're happy to bring back for you.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Cleland-McGrath.
Well, I mentioned to you, you and I talked about it earlier today. I really appreciated the slides you had about where those cuts are happening. I think that's a really valuable kind of high level of how we're modifying the budget. The one thing that's not included, which we talked about, is the fact that it does not include the rainy day fund, because it doesn't quite fit in those categories. Can you just speak to that? I think it's nice for us to all hear it.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, so that rainy day fund cash is not included in those cuts. That cash wasn't specifically considered to help balance the budget, but I was trying to be proactive in conserving our unrestricted operating cash in the general fund. So when we get into year-end procedures and we recalculate that rainy day fund, it's based on 17% of actual expenditures from the prior year. So our fiscal year 26 rainy day fund would be set based on 17% of fiscal year 25 actual expenditures. I was projecting that to be an additional $490,000 above what we have right now in the rainy day fund. We have about 5.5 in the rainy day fund. It would add an additional $490,000 to that. So my proposal was to freeze the rainy day fund for fiscal year 26. It would stay at that 5.5 million and just free up that additional $490,000 in operating cash if it were to be needed. So just trying to be proactive in that projection of decreasing cash and revenues.
Yeah, and I know that's a later on item, and I know council's heard a first glimpse of that.
Yeah.
Right. Again, this is not closing the discussion at all on the budget. Please keep digging through there, and if you got any questions. Okay, Mr. Walters.
I think on the opioid money, it'd be worth asking the county if a soft number is useful to them, or if they need the hard number up front.
Okay. All right. Are we going to talk about ordinance 5010, item 7B, the capital facilities plan? Or same thing, questions? Mr. Hoagland, I'll let you go.
Yeah, so Mayor, this is, so council may remember, last year we actually did an amendment to the 2024 CFP 24 through 29. That's hard math. So we did an amendment last year, so this coming year, 26, we're required to update the CFP at least every 2 years. So this would be a full new CFP. What we have identified for fiscal year 26 in these departments flows through to the operating budget. So our capital spending in the operating budget matches what we have here. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about this.
Mr. Walters.
So in the packet, we have the ordinance, the one-page ordinance adopting the CFP, but we don't have the document. You have assumedly made changes to the document, right?
Yes.
Where does the updated document
so
live
in the
now?
So in the republished packet, this full CFP should be included now.
Yeah, sorry, the package was republished, so to make sure we had the latest.
Oh, all right. I see that it's under the public hearing, but not under the ordinance item. All right. Thank you.
Right.
Ms. Moulton?
So the changes in the CFP from the one we've already seen to this one, are they redlined or anything, or called, how will we know what the changes are?
They're not redlined. They're just.
You want me to just talk to him?
Sure.
Yep.
So a few of the changes are, and I apologize for not just marking them in red, but some of the changes show in that change log that we went through at the beginning as part of the slide presentation that Steve showed, Mr. Hoagland showed. The rest of the changes are only in Public Works, and you can see those changes in the Public Works one-pagers by looking at, there's two different columns. One column says 26 requested, and one column says 26 allocated. The 26 allocated will now represent what we allocated to each of the Public Works groups that matches to, sorry, I'm just going to try to go there to one of them, that matches to the operating plan now. So if I look at storm, for example, you'll see two columns in the storm plan. I think I'm on page 27 of 161 right now. You'll see two columns. The column in, I'll call it pink, I don't know what color it might show on your monitor, that will match to what is in the operating plan. But what I didn't want to lose is I didn't want to lose sight of what the original request was, so you got both. We talked to and worked with the folks in the Public Works area, and they feel confident that they can deliver against these newly allocated numbers.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Hubick?
So on page 9, under pavement management, we went from $1 million to nothing. And so that's probably the most dramatic example of something that was in the original CFP and has been changed.
Probably pushed out.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm going with that's magenta.
So, Mayor Miller?
Yes, Ms. Moulton.
So I just opened randomly to page 44 of the 91, and so I'll wait till you get there. 44. Okay, that must be it. So, okay, the line, sorry, that top line, facilities emergent repairs, that's the same, but then facilities ops repair projects went up 100, so.
So what we did there is we had some of the ops budget items weren't reflected in the utilities, and so we moved them to utilities. So there were some confusing line items that Mr. Hoagland did a fantastic job of covering in the change log That was us moving dollars from the ops plan that represented in the general fund to now being shown in the various utility funds, which is where that work and the support of that work is actually going to be benefited. So, for example, let's see, what are we looking at here? Yeah, so the ops ones, some of them went up, some went down. The ones that went down moved to the utilities. The one that went up is because they needed more money to make that one work.
Okay, and I'm sorry, but can you tell me where the change log is?
Yeah, I knew somebody was going to ask that question. It's at the
change log
beginning of the budget overview, third slide, fourth slide.
Oh, I see, number 3, okay. Oh. Okay, so I guess I don't see how that corresponds, like where I'm going to find that in my in the actual CFP, because it doesn't say what those
So for the
projects
first
are.
one, and I can't navigate that fast, but if we were to go to the sewer's plan is likely $30,000 higher. Let's see, I'm sorry, equipment heaters went from 80 to 60, so we moved $60,000 to sewer. And then we also added, sorry, from 80 to 60. So they lowered the price and then they moved it to the utilities.
And then added 54.
Okay, sorry, but I'm not seeing the 80 to 60. I'm seeing like 80 to 110. Are we looking at the same thing?
That was the net effect. So the net effect is $30,000 increase.
Oh. Sorry, but where's the 60? I'm sorry, you guys, but I'm just not getting this.
So from 80,000 to 60,000, we dropped 20, and then we added 50,000, which brings the net to 30,000.
One thing to note is you're looking at this from the sewer plan perspective, not from the general fund perspective.
Okay, so, but all these changes will be highlighted in pink in the sewer part of the capital facilities plan?
Yes.
So I'll see the details there that are shown overview here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
So on page 9 that Ms. Hubick mentioned, where did the money go that was allocated before and is now zeroed out?
Keep in mind that it wasn't allocated before. It was asked for from a capital perspective, but if you went back and looked at the line item detail of what was allocated, the allocated amount for that team was less.
Okay,
and
so we just couldn't see that before because we didn't,
correct.
we didn't have that matched.
Correct. So the exercise that we took away from that meeting was we updated the capital facilities plan to, for the most part, match what we had allocated.
For the most part?
Well, where we had other discussions and ended up making some additional changes, that's what you see here.
Oh, okay.
So for council's purposes, ultimately, we're going to ask them to adopt the capital facilities plan that is the allocated amount. We're just trying to be as transparent as possible about what was asked for.
Correct. So then on the total lines, I don't know how to get back to those. But on the total lines, those lines are adding from the 26 allocated to the right. They do not include the original 2026 ask. So the totals on the far right-hand side only include one column for 2026, which is the allocated column, which will match to the line item detail in the operating plan.
Yes, the other way to do it could have redlined the allocated, or the asked.
I could have.
We could have done that.
I
so.
could have done that, yes. But I didn't.
It's a. Yeah.
If you would like that,
No,
then,
it's.
I'm happy to do it.
These are the questions that we're hoping you'd ask, so. Other questions on the CFP?
But we didn't add anything that wasn't talked about. How's that?
Mayor Miller, okay.
Ms. Moulton.
So that general overview page, that shows the whole net effect of the changes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes. There's no Easter eggs, no fun.
All right, well, you can go memorize the CFP and come back with any questions you have. Okay, with that, we will move on to our next item, and that is a contract modification, Commercial Avenue Corridor, planned Phase 1, 11th to 13th Street, better known as the Safeway intersection. And Mr. Logan Lee, when you're ready.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council and those in attendance. Tonight I bring before you a contract modification in the amount of $301,413.21 with Crucio Brothers for the ongoing 12th and Commercial Intersection Improvement Project. And the bulk of this modification is for the construction of the new signal pole foundations. The foundations are required to be significantly deeper than was originally outlined in the contract documents at the time of bid, which is why a contract mod is needed. And this is just due to the poor soil conditions under 12th under commercial. It's really silty, lots of water, lots of organic material down there. So the poles need to be 25 feet deep, and in order to comply with WashDOT standards and just general safety standards. As a reminder, this project is funded with $1.75 million in state grants from WashDOT and TIB, and the remaining funds will be paid out of the REIT fund. So other than that, I'm here to answer any questions you have.
All right, questions for Mr. Lee? All right. Sounds like a very well-written agenda, Bill, and very well explained, and motions perhaps then.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Cleveland-McGrath.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say thank you for including all of the additional documentation of why and how this happened. I think it was really helpful and helps us not have questions up on the dais. So I appreciated the preparation that you did on the packet. That being said, I move that City Council authorize the mayor to sign a modification to contract 19-095-TRN-005 with the Colicchio, I can never pronounce that name, Brothers, in the amount of $301,413.21, increasing the total contract price to $2,431,276.72.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Cleveland-McGrath and a second by Mr. Fantini to approve the contract as presented. Any additional discussion? Mr. Francie, vote please.
Ms. Cleveland-McGrath.
Yes.
Ms. Moulton.
Yes.
Mr. McDougall.
Yes.
Ms. Hubick.
Yes.
Mr. Fantini.
Yes.
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next up, item 7D. This is ordinance 5011, increasing the city utility tax by 2%. It's a discussion item with possible action, and Mr. Hoagland's already back at the dais. Mr. Hoagland, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. We talked a little bit about this last week. We talked about this at the Finance Committee last week as well. So what we took away from last week's council meeting was a request to review if a different tax rate for different customer bases. So as a reminder, the way the utility tax works, it's easiest to think of the city and the utility as two separate entities. So the city taxes the water utility for the right and privilege of providing water within the city's water service area. The utility then collects that tax from its customers and remits that tax to the city, and it resides in our general fund for general use. So I spoke with the city attorney about this, and we don't, I think in order to move forward with trying to figure out if we can charge different tax rates for different customer bases, we would need to engage an outside attorney. It's kind of beyond our wherewithal here in the city. So that's what I'm asking council tonight. If it's something you want us to pursue, we'll reach out to outside counsel and have them engage in looking further into this. So the ordinance I have is the same ordinance I presented last week, although in the initial packet, the old version was included. So this is what I provided last week, which is just a straight increase from 7% to 9%. For the city's water customers, the refinery customers, and residential and commercial customers. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini?
Thanks. I'm supportive of your path forward here. I had after the last meeting, did a lot of thinking and kind of little research, and I definitely feel like, for me, a tiered plan is something that we should be looking to go to, and also possibly exploring taxing the water purveyors. But it feels like a very condensed timeline to get all that done in an effective way. So I am supportive of this, but I am also still very interested in pursuing that tiered structure along with some information around purveyors.
This is an asterisk item, so I can see if any member of the public wishes, that was my fault. Any member of the public wishes to comment on this item? Okay, Council.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton?
I move to adopt ordinance 5011, increasing the utility tax by 2% from 7% to 9%.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Ms. Moulton, a second by Ms. Hubick to adopt ordinance 5011. Any additional discussion? Mr. Franczak, vote please.
Ms. Moulton?
Yes.
Mr. McDougall?
Yes.
Ms. Hubick?
Yes.
Mr. Fantini?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Ms. Cleland McGrath?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thanks. Next up, 7E, ordinance 5012. Freeze the emergency reserve fund. Discussion with possible action. And Mr. Hoagland.
Thank you, Mayor. So as we talked about a little bit earlier, this would leave the emergency reserve fund at $5.3 million for fiscal year 26. As I said, just a kind of a proactive move to try and conserve unrestricted operating cash from being moved from that line into the rainy day fund. Happy to answer any questions that council may have.
All right, any member of the public before I turn it over to council? All right, council.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
Thanks to Mr. Hoagland for amending the text of the ordinance to make this only a one-year adjustment. I do think in the future we should maybe quit calling it the rainy day fund, because that confuses a little bit with the general fund, the various other funds. But the rainy day reserve helps free us up with a little bit of cash for next year. And if this is a one-year thing, I guess we can try it. I move approval of the ordinance as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Walters and a second by Ms. Hubick to approve ordinance 5012. Additional discussion. Mr. Franczak, vote please.
Mr. McDougall?
Yes.
Ms. Hubick?
Yes.
Mr. Fantini?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Ms. Cleland McGrath?
Yes.
Ms. Moulton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, 7F now, ordinance 5014, 2025 Development Regulation Amendments. This is a discussion item only. And all right, Mr. Coleman, whenever you're ready.
All right, good evening, Council, Mayor, thank you. I'm John Coleman, the Director of Planning, Community, and Economic Development. And tonight, I thought we'd give the Council a second shot at discussing the development regulation amendments that we didn't have a whole lot of time to speak about at last Monday, so there are no changes here from what you saw last week, but thought in such a case like we are experiencing, where it's not too late to move forward, maybe you would want to discuss this a little more, since you got a little more gas in the tank tonight. I'll leave it up to the council if you'd like me to go through the slideshow that I prepared for the last meeting but didn't go through. But ultimately, what we're hoping to do is talk about any questions that you have that we can either research for you or ideally answer here tonight for you, but get better answers for you if you have any questions before we talk about this again on the 24th. As a reminder, on the 24th, we're going to ask the council to review the comprehensive plan and be prepared to present any changes that you wanted to pursue, anything substantive we'll need to have a comment period on, so we're prepared to have that comment period start on the 26th after the Wednesday after the 24th, where we'll have everything available for the public after the discussion on the 24th. And then that comment period would go for 2 weeks, and then we'd be able to act on, I believe it's December 15th, if possible, if you're willing to do so after that comment period. That's getting it in right under the wire, because the 15th is the last full city council meeting that we have on the schedule for the year. There is a meeting on the 22nd, but generally that's reserved for just paying bills and not major action. I mean, we certainly can, but I wanted to make sure that we got this to you in a time frame that allows you to do your work without having special meetings. And of course, this is all due at the end of 2025.
Yeah, so there's a timeline for when there's substantive changes that have to have a public hearing. So that's what we're asking council to look at any significant changes. We already have the one that's going in, and there'll be a additional public hearing, right, with a timeline there.
Well, we'll have an additional public comment.
Public comment period, sorry. Public comment period.
Yes.
So that's what puts us on the timeline.
And then, of course, this is marked as a asterisk item, so people can make comments, but we haven't committed to needing. I don't think we need to have a full public hearing, but with the public comment period open, people will have the opportunity to give written comments and then speak at the council. So that is what we're hoping to achieve. I'll go through this presentation fairly quickly because you've seen a lot of this information. And then the important thing is, by the 24th, any substantive changes need to be available for us to process. We do know that there are a couple of changes that are going to be necessary. We got some comments from the Department of Commerce, so we'll probably need to make some changes to these related to that. And then we know in the comp plan, which is not what we're talking about tonight, we know that we need to get a tree canopy discussion in there in MAP. So I think I did mention this last time, on October 22nd, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the draft development regulation amendments. And so that is technically what is prepared and presented in this package. Their changes to the development regulations are summarized in Exhibit D of the staff memo. And I believe I go over these in detail. So some were amendments to implement the HAP. Oh, these are the major highlights. Sorry, these aren't the changes that they requested. These are the major changes that were made to the development regulations were changes to implement the housing action plan. And all the changes that were presented were based on the principle of incremental changes, so there wasn't major changes in any neighborhood. We also addressed statutory requirements for consistency with new state requirements. And to complete the 2021 comprehensive plan update requests and requested amendments proposed by citizens that were included in the 2025 docket, and updated zoning map to match the future land use map, which we went over pretty much detail at our last meeting. The middle housing amendments, Libby put this together our planning manager for the city, put this together showing where these middle housing amendments would take place, along with a handy chart showing what those specific changes are. So as we move from the top left across, like we are reading a page, in the R2A, would be allowing small duplexes, triplexes, and townhouses. And you can see that there's some, down in the bottom right, it's cross-referenced. These have unit size limitations, so small duplexes are limited to 1,000 to 1,400 square feet. Triplexes only allowed on alley loading lots, which in the R2 is not going to be a lot, but in the R2A there are several roads with alleys, and townhouses same, only allowed on alley loaded lots, and unit lot sizes are limited. In the R2, the changes, the small duplexes. And in Old Town, we would allow small duplexes, triplexes, townhouses. In the R4 and R4A, which are already our high-density zones, we changed the co-living requirements to meet state requirements. In the R3 and R3A, which is kind of a medium to high-density area, small duplexes would be allowed. And on the R1, the changes to allow cottages. And in the bottom left, you can see we also, some of the changes are to the lot sizes. And so these show the lot size changes. You can see, for example, in this chart, the small duplexes here, currently there isn't something like that in the code, so everything, those are all new lot sizes. Otherwise, if something is scratched out and then the new underlined would be the proposed new sizes, minimum lot size for each of those types in each of the zones. So hopefully this chart makes sense and is helpful. All right, I'm not hearing any questions, so I'll move on. Exhibit E of the staff report includes the Planning Commission's recommendations. I put a handy photo of what that document looks like, because I know there's several documents in there and it gets a little confusing, so we tried to make it obvious and clear with our naming routines with exhibits and attachments. This recommendation has 3 attachments. The recorded motion, which has the attachment A, is the draft development regulations. That's the large 111 pages showing strike through and underline. Attachment B includes additional changes to that original draft as recommended by the Planning Commission. That's 6 pages. The Planning Commission's additional changes are not included in that bigger 111-page document. That just as is, that went to the public for review in September. And attachment C is the zoning map. We'll go through some of these. You can see attachment B is the 23 additional changes that were recommended by the Planning Commission. Notably, 1 through 18 were things that staff recommended. Those weren't something that the Planning Commission just was, as they were going through, said, let's change these. These are things that we discovered along the process that we made recommended changes to. 19 through 23 were things that the Planning Commission saw and requested amendments. I don't really want to go through line item through all 23. I will if you find it helpful.
No, I'm pretty sure council can read, but again, I keep going back to the important thing, like, you know, if a majority of council says, I want to change X, Y, Z, then that gets added to a public hearing. So something significant, that's what we have to make sure that that's
Mayor
highlighted.
Miller.
Mr. Walters.
We talked about number 8 last week.
Recommended denial of docket item Ledge 2024 to amend 1942-120 to remove or clarify the requirement for buildings in the CBD and MMU. Okay, yes, we talked about that at length, yes.
And I thought our consensus was that we were going to evolve that a little bit. Is my recollection consistent with your recollection?
Yes.
Okay.
So I did include all of them. If there was any that the council wanted to discuss tonight, I can navigate to any of those 23. Otherwise, that's about all that I had presented, ready to present to you tonight.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton?
I'd like to have a discussion about number 12, the zone-specific standards for indoor recreation and the light manufacturing one in industrial zones.
Yes.
I had that, so on page 21 of 111 so I'm kind of toggling back and forth between the Planning Commission recommendations and then the development regulations themselves. But on page 21 of the 111 pages of the development regulations, it talks about, sorry. So there's a note here from staff. And so this is about, say, pickleball, indoor volleyball, gymnastics, and it's, one of the notes here says, consider if restrictions on certain uses like theaters or pools would be appropriate, and whether restrictions on locating near the water in the industrial zone should be considered to retain waterfront industrial land for that purpose. So my question for council is, and staff, are we concerned, I mean, we've talked about pickleball, obviously we need a spot for indoor. Are we concerned at all about losing some of that light manufacturing space or industrial space, particularly by the water? Because we only have so much of that, and we're not likely to turn, nor are future councils likely to turn other zoning back into industrial or light manufacturing. And I don't know how big of an issue this is, but I just thought I just wanted to bring it up to hear what other people thought. So basically, yeah, my question being, do we think we would lose, I guess this is really a question for staff. Do we think that this, when we look at, say, the land use map, if we're at risk of losing some of that valuable light manufacturing or industrial land? I'm all for indoor recreation, certainly, but do we see that as a risk?
So the Planning Commission had, I think, 2 days of discussion about this, because they wanted to be very careful about what was allowed. And even in the way it's written, and I apologize, I'll bring it up here in a moment. I wanted to turn on the zoning map for you. So everybody can see the industrial area of which you speak. So the industrial area is spanning from just around 30th, at least near the water, down to Fidalgo Bay Road. And so in that area is a lot of boat storage, Bunnies by the Bay and Fidalgo Marina, and then more boat storage up here. But this is Seattle Yachts and Banana Belt. So those are the areas that I think would be close to the water that there would be concern. So that brings me back to your additional point that you brought up, which was, did we consider what the impacts of those types of uses were? And yes. I'm trying to go back to the criteria that the Planning Commission ultimately came up with here. Apologize as I navigate around. We included some information. Recreational uses must be designed to minimize conflicts with industrial operations, including noise, truck access, and hours of operation. The maximum occupancy for such facilities must not exceed 30 people unless it is demonstrated by the applicant that higher occupancy will not disrupt industrial uses. So that's the criteria that we were using. We wanted to make sure that we were allowing for small scale things like gyms, like CrossFit gyms, and other uses that might have people there on hours outside of general operation hours of an industrial zone. So we didn't want to have it something where kids might be coming down there during the day while there's a lot going on. That was a big concern. But in the evenings, parents driving down with their kids to go to a small gymnastics area in a small industrial building might be more acceptable. There was still some concern about that, having kids around in an industrial area. But we recognize that that's where these things tend to happen, especially CrossFit gyms. But we didn't think like movie theaters or other large-scale things were appropriate for that area because we wanted to make sure that we didn't lose that industrial use. So walking that line between having the industrial property available for industrial uses and also reflecting what often we see in there, not just in Anacortes, but in other cities, some of these small-scale gyms and other uses. So we carefully went through all the types of indoor recreation uses that are in our zoning code and made judgment calls on which ones seemed most appropriate for that area based on the criteria we've identified in this draft.
Since council didn't take you up on your question, I'll give it a shot. I mean, I think it allows more flexibility in the zone. It's certainly not changing the zoning, but if there's a better use, I think that it might help. But I don't know if your question was more about the conflicts or changing the use of the zone, or
It was
both.
more about changing the use of the zone, but that's helpful, Mayor Miller, because it still will be industrial area. We're not changing the zoning.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm fine with that.
All right.
Thank
I
you.
almost helped. Okay.
And
thanks.
the small scale, one other topic was the small scale was, they're intentionally small enough that nobody's going to build a facility for, and go through all the expense of building a small building in the industrial neighborhood for a CrossFit gym or something like that. But they might occupy a vacant space and because it's a reasonable price. But especially near the waterfront, the cost of building is going to prohibit a lot of these uses and keep it and our the shoreline regulations also will apply.
Thank you.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
I think if we really wanted to keep them small, we would not provide for that last clause that says, unless it is demonstrated by the applicant that a higher occupancy will not disrupt industrial uses.
There was a lot of debate around that point, too.
I think being specific and clear.
We originally were kicking around, I think, 25 people, and then we actually went through the exercise of imagining how many people are in like a CrossFit gym or a gymnastics class or something like that, and we felt 25 was pretty low. And then the conversation evolved to, okay, well, 30 is better, but we can't imagine every scenario, so that's why that clause got put in there to be, if it can be truly demonstrated that it's reasonable, then we might be open to it.
Well, and I think that the problem really isn't the recreational use disrupting the industrial use. Usually we think about industrial uses disrupting other uses. I think it's really the recreational use using up the available land for the industrial use. So I don't think that really, it doesn't get at that concern. Also, I would note that this would seem to prohibit the indoor recreation youth center that we've been talking about south of the skate park.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Fantini.
This is a different subject. I want to make sure nobody else wanted to get on that first. Okay. And if this is the wrong time to ask this question, I apologize, but I'm looking here at streets. This is probably not a development regulation question, but, and I noticed there's a lot of streets in the plan that are designated as collectors and designated as arterials. But I did notice one significant street missing, or at least in my opinion, missing from that list, and that's Kansas Avenue, which I feel like funnels a significant amount of traffic with all the new development that has happened over the past 10 years, whether it be Rock Ridge and if we're going to be increasing density in the R2A zone, which Kansas runs right through, I don't know if anybody else feels like that is kind of an important street to designate as more than just a local street, especially when we're looking at wanting to do work to that street and potentially opening it up for potential grant funding opportunities. I think if we are missing that as a call out for an important, whether it be collector or arterial, I do think that is a miss. Thoughts?
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Hubick.
Don't we have to complete the CFP work to actually add sidewalks in order for it to be classified as a collector or an arterial? Aren't there certain things that have to be met to receive that classification? Because that was my assumption. Like, Kansas is called out here in the CFP for 28, but that was also an assumption.
So the transportation element identifies the collector arterials, and the development regulations should be reflecting those active transportation networks. And so I will have our transportation consultant look into specifically the question of should Kansas be on any of these lists. Are there specific areas that you wanted to point to?
I think as it goes all the way down from the top of Rock,
I'm sorry, it's specific sections of the code that...
Oh, the code. Sorry.
that we should be looking at.
I'm not sure. I'm not very smart at the code, I'll be honest there. I just didn't see it on the list of collectors on page 71 or 382 in our packet. And it functions as a collector. It may not have sidewalks. I would say that's a huge oversight from planning directors prior to you, but it functions as, at the very least, in my opinion, a collector. So while, Ms. Hewick's point is well taken, but is there anything that we can do? Because it seems like we're not going to have anytime in the near future the huge amount of funding to be able to do it. So it'd be nice to be able to go after some grant funding or other types of opportunities that maybe making that road a little more important could open up for us.
I certainly think staff can figure out that answer of what the implications are of adding it to the list or not adding it to the list.
Great, thank you.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
I think Mr. Fantini raises an excellent point with respect to that road. However, I have a larger concern over this entire section because we list streets and street segments over and over and over again in the code. But we also have a map. I think the map is somewhat more easy to read, accurate, easy to follow, and need not be duplicated in the code. But then also the code goes on to say that, you know, some sections, let me see here, for example, on page 74 of 111. Says, for instance, March Point has collector streets north and south of SR 20. Collectors in this area of the city may or may not be required to provide the sidewalk separation buffer and parking facilities shown in Figure 7 based on the discretion of the Public Works Director. And there's several sections where it says based on the discretion of the Public Works Director, based on the discretion of the Public Works Director, which is abdicating our authority to figure out where we should have sidewalks or other facilities. There's another section in here, and I'm not going to find the page immediately, but it's clearly referring to neighborhoods such as the Cap Santa neighborhood that doesn't have sidewalks, doesn't want sidewalks, shouldn't get sidewalks, shouldn't be required to provide sidewalks. And I think we should be, as the legislative authority, calling out those areas that aren't going to get developed with sidewalks on a map or in a list, but maybe preferably on a map, and saying just no sidewalk, not delegating it to the Public Works Director to figure it out, but just to say this is an area that's not going to get it. There's another bigger problem, though, and that is that we have had some standards in the code for a while now, and we haven't been applying them evenly. So sometimes a house might get built and build a sidewalk, and sometimes not. And I think that the reason on the ground for that is because usually you can't just build like a half block of sidewalk, because then it's channelizing the water and going where? Like you got to have the next block. So we need to have like a fee in lieu program for sidewalks to make that work. But also, we have no plan for being able to afford maintaining these sidewalks once they are built, let alone the increased pavement width of a fully built out street where the street is not built out now. I mean, we don't actually have a plan for maintaining the streets that are already built. So that really leads me, I mean, most of our neighborhoods are already built out. So what is the mechanism, or what is the effect of adopting these sections of code? If the street is not already built out and you build a house, are you going to have to build out that portion of the street? Because if so, that just adds to the price of housing, costs a ton of money to build your house, and doesn't effectively build the rest of the street. And we can't make a single house build a whole street. So,
and that is why, like, those two areas that you mentioned are exempted, because Cap Santa, there's not a high priority or need for sidewalks. And I think the idea here was also in March's point, it's not a pedestrian area. So what is the fiscal and rationale for having sidewalks in an area where you need to be in a car to be safe?
Yes, and I concur with those, except for the fact that I think we could call them out specifically. But there are streets all over town, too, that do not have sidewalks now. And I think we ought to be able to choose between those streets that we do want to have sidewalks. Maybe they have missing bits of sidewalk and we need to fill in the rest of the gap. But between some streets that have low volume, low traffic, low speed, and should just be designed to stay that way. I mean, I see people in my neighborhood pushing their strollers on the street, not on the sidewalk, because the sidewalk has gaps and is uneven, and there's not enough traffic in the street to worry about. My fundamental problem is we do not have enough money for all the things that we have always said that we wanted, and we need to start making choices about what we really want when what we have to have versus what we could make do with less. The WUNRF is called out in our code elsewhere, not in this section, but as an option, I hope it still is, I hope it wasn't struck, which is that Dutch road with a different surface, multimodal, so you don't have to have sidewalks and you can have a narrower width.
WUNRFs.
Yeah, is that still in here? Do you happen to know?
I don't think we changed any of the WUNRF language.
But that's like an option in other places, and in my mind, it's a pretty good option for low volume, low traffic, low speed streets.
Mayor Miller, what's that called again?
Yeah, Mr. Fantini, go ahead. Somebody's going to try to do their best Dutch, and I don't have it.
Yeah.
WUNRF?
Okay.
All right.
Just curious what that is.
So around this topic, I think these are great questions that next week we'll have. I'll do my best to have our transportation consultant here, and he will be prepared for a discussion of all those details. And if the answers that you seek are already in there, he can point that out to us, or provide us the rationale for why they're not there for you. And then if you're not satisfied with the answers that we get there, then perhaps we propose some changes. With those, you got to be careful that it starts to spider web out as you make changes to the transportation element, the things related to the transportation element. But not to say that we shouldn't, just be aware.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
A different issue. I think in some places in the code, I spotted some places where I think we put in a range of 900 to 1,000 square feet. That comes to mind. My find feature does not seem to be working, so I'm not able to pull that up right away. But are we supposed to choose a value in that range for final adoption? Oh, I found one. Page 42. At the bottom of page 42, it says townhouse units must have no more than 900 to 1,000 square feet gross floor area. So assumedly, we need to pick a number.
So that's 1943-070.
Yes. I didn't see it in the Planning Commission's recommendations. I think that yeah, on the next page as well, there's another range maybe we need to select from.
Or is that a range that the applicant's going to ask for,
No.
and it needs to be in the range?
It needs to be a solid number.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just making
So
sure.
we would love the
Give us the solid
city
number.
council's decision, recommendation on that one.
Does staff have a recommendation on that?
900 to 1,000.
Though the staff will come back and with a
We
good
can come back with
recommendation.
a recommendation, yes.
Mayor Miller,
Ms. Moulton.
can we look at page 126 of our packets? And that is lot size and development intensity, form and intensity standards for residential use.
Can you give the other page number too?
Okay, 126 of the packet, page 23 of 111 of the development regulations. And it's tabled 19.42.020. So it talks about lot size for single-family dwelling minimums. That's the top section. And then underneath, there's lot size for duplex, minimum square feet. So in a couple of the boxes, or 3 of them for lot size for duplex minimum square feet, there are asterisked numbers for small duplex units, and there kind of goes back to the previous question. It's maximum 1,000 to 1,400 square feet gross floor area per unit. So I imagine that's something we'll be discussing also.
So these numbers where it says 7,500 or 6,000, and then or 6,000 or 4,500, those, the Planning Commission's recommendations do show what the choice was, and this chart generally shows what their ultimate recommendation was. The chart on the screen, I apologize.
Oh, wait, okay, the one you're showing us. Okay.
And it is in the recommendations that the Planning Commission made. I can navigate to those and see.
Okay, wait, actually, could you go back to that one real quick, please? Okay, so my question, I think, is answered by this chart, because the R3A in our packet doesn't show the 3,000 square feet with asterisk, and I wanted to know why not, but now this shows it for a small duplex. Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay, so R3A, when you look at our packet, okay, sorry. So small duplex, it says 4,500. So what I'm wondering, in our packet on that chart, so there are 2 numbers of lot size for 3 of the zones. So that's R2A, R3 in Old Town. But R3A doesn't have, and so those smaller lot sizes correspond to the lot size for a single-family dwelling in the row above. But in R3A, there's a 3,000 square foot minimum for a single-family dwelling, yet for lot size for a small duplex isn't listed as 3,000 underneath, which is different than the other 3 boxes.
I see exactly what you're saying. So you see originally the lot size for a duplex was, in the R3A, was 5,000.
Yes.
So went with a small reduction to keep it from going without it being too extreme of a change. And before you want to get too debate that too much, we don't have an R3A zone. We have zoning code for it, so we couldn't create it, but we actually don't have any areas in the city that are zoned R3A.
Okay, but this is still inconsistent if we do this sometimes, and we do still have this column. So my question is, why can't we have a 3,000 minimum square feet for a small size duplex if you can build a single family dwelling on that size lot of 3,000 square feet? Why isn't it's inconsistent to me, and I don't see why you can't do a small duplex if you can do a single family residence. Is it because if you did 2,000 square feet, the lot coverage would be more than 60, it would be like 67% of the lot?
It would be, that would be very small. Also, for what it's worth, in the R2 and R2A, the Planning Commission ultimate recommendation is to go with the larger of those 2 sizes, not the 6,000 or 4,500. But instead the 7,500 in the R2A and 6,000 in the R3. So they didn't reduce it drastically. They didn't choose the ones that reduced it. And those smaller ones with the asterisk, that would be limited size to small unit duplexes.
Right, so I would appreciate knowing like the nature of that discussion, because I was operating as if what we see in our packet, this table is what was going to be proposed. So it's hard sometimes to toggle back between the packet and the Planning Commission recommendations and this map.
Yep. And when you're looking at page 23 of the document and you see that So for example, you were talking about the R3A going from 5,000 to 4,500. That's what was in the HAP, the Housing Action Plan. So we were just using what was proposed in the Housing Action Plan.
Right, that's not my question, though. So my question is, okay, so now that I know those asterisk numbers have been eliminated, I think that that's something that we don't need to talk about it now because I just like unloaded this on everyone, but I'm wondering why we can't have small duplexes on those size lots where you can have a single-family home
So the
on
discussion
those
that
size lots, or is it to do with lot coverage percentage?
So the reason that, so if you imagine we're looking here at the 6,000 under R2A with the asterisk for it, that would allow a small unit duplex, or 4,500 in the R3 for a small unit duplex. The Planning Commission was concerned that that was a big jump from what is currently 7,500 square foot minimum lot down to 4,500.
Sure.
So that was why those small unit duplex measures were not recommended by the Planning Commission.
Okay, so maybe my question is really a math question. How large of a single-family home would you be able to build on that 4,500 square foot lot in R3? Maybe that's not a question that would be answered now, but to me, if you have I haven't done the math, but if you have a small duplex that's the same size as a single-family residence allowed on that lot, I would want to make sure we could have a small duplex there.
So for a single family, it would be a maximum lot coverage of 50%. So if the single family size is 4,500, that'd be 2,250.
So then if you had a small duplex with 1,000 square feet in each one, that's 2,000. It would be smaller than the single-family house that you're allowed to build there. So I would advocate and would look forward to council discussion with how, and not tonight, but how people would feel about that. Because part of our problem, I think, is that we have giant single-family homes and we're not allowed to build a small duplex with the same footprint. To me, that doesn't equate. There's no equivalency there. So I think that I would like to open up that discussion for a future council meeting.
Well, we only have one more council
I was
meeting to
gonna-
discuss
I
this
was gonna
before we
say
need to pull the
that's-
trigger on something.
Okay, do we want to talk about it now?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters, and are you finished? Okay. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it that way. Mr. Walters.
I have some clarifying questions here. Small duplex, what is the definition of a small duplex?
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Well, in the little note next to the asterisk, it says maximum 1,000 to 1,400 square feet gross floor area per unit. If we're going by that, it looks to me like we would decide that range.
Yes.
Is that what we mean by small duplex?
Yes.
Do we ever define small duplex as a term? I didn't find it in the residential design standards nor the definition section.
I'm very sure that I thought we had a clickable connection to that.
So maybe it would be worth it. First of all, maybe it would be worth it in the table, the page 23 table, to have a separate line for small duplex rather than all the asterisks and stuff, to make it clear what we're talking about when we talk about small duplex. I find the discussion about R3A a little hazy since it's not mapped. I like to think about, what lots have already been platted, what size lots have already been platted and are typical in the area that's platted or that's zoned. And then for me, it can be more clear as to what reasonably could get built there. Because if you have a minimum lot size if there's a minimum lot size in R3 of 4,500, but all the lots are zoned at 3,000, then you're not going to get anybody dividing their lot in half because maybe they have two 3,000 square foot lots, right? Because historically, they were 3,000, they bought two, so now they've got a 6,000 square foot lot. They're not going to divide their lot in half to build one of these things when 4,500 is the minimum. They need to keep the 6,000 together in order to have a 4,500 minimum. So without knowing where a zone is mapped and then what the typical lot size is in the zone, it's kind of hard to know what these numbers should look like. But also, I look forward to some future where we might see more stacked flats. So if you could build a single-family residence and it had 2 stories, that could be a duplex. Maybe it doesn't qualify as a primary unit at an ADU because maybe it exceeds the ADU threshold of 1,000 square feet. But if you can build it as a single-family residence, and it's a single-family residence with 2 stories, why can't it be a duplex with 1 story each? That would weigh in favor of what Ms. Molden is saying about harmonizing the SFR and the small duplex numbers. Again, I don't care about R3A, but maybe R3, R2A, maybe we should be looking at those numbers and making sure they're matching what reasonably can be achieved with the typical lot sizes.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini?
I have a question. So this magical R3A that doesn't appear, I'm just very confused. So we have an R3A zone on paper, but we don't really have an R3A zone, or like how, can you just, I'm sorry, if anybody's watching this at home, they have to be confused. We're talking about an R3A zone, but it doesn't seem to exist.
So I believe in 2016, we created the R3A zone with the intent of someday finding property within the city that is appropriate to be zoned R3A. We have not gone through the exercise of looking for R3A zoning, largely because when we did our land capacity analysis, we showed that we had enough capacity for our housing, and so it just wasn't a priority for us to change somebody's zoning on them. We've been focusing on the HAP, the Housing Action Plan recommendations of keeping, of doing incremental changes like these to enable a little bit of infill housing. I believe at one point Makers, our consultant that did the Housing Action Plan, said, it wasn't worth doing the R3A, and they've even recommended getting rid of it, but we've just left it on paper in case in the future we need it.
And then I guess my only other question would be, R3 and R3A are in the same box. What's the difference between R3 and R3A? And I'm sorry for taking us down this rabbit hole, but
R3A allows for a little bit more density than the R3. Slightly smaller lots.
okay. But we don't have an R3A, we don't have any land designated as R3A right
Correct.
now. Okay.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters?
I looked up the establishment of residential zones in 1940-030, and it does say that R3A would be for areas characterized by a historical pattern of smaller, generally 3,000 square foot lots, which would mean the minimum lot size of 3,000 there in the chart, the pre-existing one for R3A of 3,000 for an SFR would be great, because that's the historical lot size in this mythical R3A that we don't have mapped. But especially since it would have no effect on the ground, I think we should just change that 4,500 to 3,000, because then it would be consistent with the whole rest of the chart, as Ms. Moulton points out. No effect on the ground.
For the R3?
For the R3A.
For the small duplexes?
The small duplex. But I also really like the idea of inserting the word small duplex into the chart so that we can figure it out without the asterisks.
Yeah, and that's not a substantive change, that'd just make it easier.
Yeah. I think a further step we could take would be to change the R3 minimum lot size smaller, because I actually bet that the historical sizes in some of that R3 is 3,000, but since there's R3A that specifically calls that out, maybe that's not the case. Anyway,
So should we be looking at potentially having small duplexes on 3,000 square foot lots in the R3A? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's what you're hearing.
Okay.
Since I still
Yeah,
sit
you
down
still
on the floor.
got
Yeah. It seems to me that, we might create this 4,500 square foot minimum lot for small duplexes, and maybe nobody will be able to take advantage of it. Because they won't be able to, unless they have 4 lots side by side, and then can recombine and subdivide, and they're unbuilt. It just seems like it probably won't have too much effect.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Cleland-McGrath.
So in the same vein of this discussion, we've got cottage maximum size of 1,200 square feet, correct? Cottages are a maximum of 1,200 square feet.
Yes.
We've got ADUs that are 1,000, I'm assuming we have to go up to 1,000, and that's the recommended for this. We now have small duplexes somewhere between 1,000 and 1,400. It seems like if we could harmonize those small duplexes into maybe a similar size of 1,200 square feet as the cottage homes, it then essentially gives the flexibility to the builder or whoever's redeveloping to, whatever we can do to simplify, I think is good. I think that we also know that if the ADUs do not require the hookup fees, right?
Which they currently don't.
Which they currently don't. So I think we should encourage the option of having some more flexibility and make it appealing to do a small duplex or a cottage homes, because those are the types that, with the intent of people being able to purchase and build equity and own something, that is, those small duplexes and cottage homes kind of are that appealing thing versus ADUs that can get built essentially anywhere. We really don't have much control, and also they do not provide the monetary infrastructure associated with it, like that ADUs kind of are able to be waived for. And I think that is a good tool in the toolbox of an ADU being added to any single family or any residential lot. But to be able to have the small duplex and the cottage home kind of harmonize of those expectations would be beneficial. I don't know how other people feel, but I think we should discuss that.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
I agree, especially at the small end here, all the various little distinctions really make the code rather complicated. Mm-hmm. So like, you're pushed toward an ADU with a size limit that maybe you want less, but it has fewer connection fees, and you might want to do a duplex, but the cottages have, you might want to do a cottage, but the cottages have all these other rules that come with it around a central open space and that kind of thing. So I agree with Ms. Cleland-McGrath, but I also think that is a more significant set of changes to the code that maybe we don't want to start working on right now.
Well, we do need to choose between 1,000 or 1,400 for small duplexes. It was never addressed by the Planning Commission at our fault. We missed that.
And yeah, and for the question of these ranges, I would lean in favor of making them larger to make them more flexible, and I would lean in favor of making them smaller to make them cheaper.
We also have to consider that we're reducing the lot size, so a larger one, such as 1,400, might be a challenge.
But that would be fine because they're constrained by the other criteria, right? So they don't have to fit the larger one on there. They can.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Well, and I agree with what Mr. Walter said, but I also know that the feedback we've received on some of the cottages that have been built, having an extra couple hundred square feet allows for that office flex space that some folks, that makes it more appealing to build, makes it more appealing to the buyer. I don't know if that is valid since the goal is to keep them affordable, but also if we need things built and it's 200 square feet difference and we're getting just inventory, new inventory being added, and it is ultimately a more appealing product, maybe we do the 1,400 square feet. Not for the cottage, because I don't think we want to change the cottage, but for the small duplex, knowing that they still have to meet all of the other criteria. So may not be feasible, but at least they have the flexibility to get creative.
All right, well, I like where the conversation is going about coming up with a number, because I think that's what you're going to need, right, Mr. Coleman?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters?
I think that the larger square footage also could be useful in a retrofit application. So say you had an existing dwelling of 1,400 square feet, and you wanted to make the basement or the first floor or the second floor into one half of a duplex. You couldn't do that with an ADU because it exceeds 1,000. So would you just, so if your footprint were 1,400, you would have to like delete some portion of one of the floors to get down to 1,000 if we set this at 1,000. But if it were at the higher end of the range here, 1,400, then you could do it. And on a 6,000 square foot lot, a 1,400 square foot footprint, stacked flat, fits into every neighborhood in town, except maybe Rockridge. It works. So I think I would be in favor of 1,400 square feet. If you think of it as side-by-side duplex, that doesn't fit, but then it won't get built because it doesn't fit on the small lot.
I think you make a good point. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think you make a good point. I think there's a lot of single-family homes that were built during kind of that refinery boom that are that 1,250 to 1,400 square feet and are on pretty decent-sized lots that putting a second floor on could be a creative way of adding housing stock.
Although you're almost a tear down if you're adding a second floor.
There are a lot of possibilities. But you're going to have to go with one. I know flexibility, affordability, fitability they're all important.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini.
I like 1,400, and I think because they don't have to build 1,400, right? And I actually really like the idea of stacking. I have one of those old refinery homes, 1,500, 14-something square feet, and would love a second story. I think there's probably a lot of people that would do that. I like the 1,400.
All right, I'm seeing consensus on that one. Do you get that, Mr. Coleman?
1,400, absolutely.
All right. Thank you. What else?
There was, while we're talking about unit sizes, there was also discussion of townhouse unit sizes on page 42 and 43 that say no more than 900 or 1,000. That's just a 1,000 or 100 square foot difference. Since we're on the topic, did the city council want to weigh in on that one that we also missed?
This is the triplex units must have no more than 900 to 1,000 square feet gross floor area? Is that the one?
So there's also triplexes on the top of page 42, there's townhomes on the bottom of page 42, and there's townhomes on the
Oh, okay,
top
and
of the page.
they're all 900 to 1,000. Okay, council.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Going back to the conversation we just had, it seems like 1,000 would be reasonable because that's also the same as an ADU. And also if they don't fit, they don't fit. They'll get built smaller potentially.
I'm seeing a majority of head nods on that, Mr. Coleman.
So 1,000?
Yep.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
On page 131 of the packet, it talks about the parks, the public park space incentive for bonus height.
Can you give the other page number
Yeah.
too?
Sorry?
The other page number as
Oh,
well.
yeah, 28 of 111. So currently, the minimum developer-provided public park space to qualify for the bonus incentive is 10,000 square feet, or 5% minimum, which is about a quarter acre. And I think that the Planning Commission recommendation was to turn this into 2 bonuses instead of just the 1. But in the staff notes, there was a request to qualify for the bonus incentive from 10,000 to 5,000, do not require dedication to the city. So I'm not totally clear if the recommendation is to just make it a double bonus, or if you do 5,000 square feet and 2.5%, if that's a single bonus. I'm a little unclear on how this is going to.
Could you repeat the zoning code, and we'll bring you clarification next week?
Okay, which,
You said I was on page 23?
Yeah, I think 1942-070.
yes. So it's page 27 of 111. Oh, whoops, no, that's wrong, sorry. 28 of 111.
And I'm not sure I understood the question, but I think Mr. Coleman did. Mr. Coleman, you got?
I'm looking for the
Well.
Planning Commission
Oh, I
recommendation
gotcha.
now, too, sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's number 6.
Number 6
Number
says
6,
Mr.
okay, here
Walters.
it is. So my reading of it is that the Planning Commission recommendation is instead of, as it stands, 5% of the gross floor area or 10,000 square feet currently qualifies for a bonus height incentive. But it looks like the Planning Commission recommends it now it qualifies for 2 bonus incentive elements, allowing for up to 20 feet of additional building height. So I didn't know, instead of just doubling this one, is there an option for a smaller park, like a 5,000 square foot park for the single option? I just am not clear how this is, how this totally works.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. McDougal.
Yeah, my read on it, there's a comment in the document that talks about 5,000 square foot gets us kind of like below like a threshold for a reasonable park, and it's more like kind of an extended sidewalk, or maybe...
Pocket park?
Pocket park, yeah. Maybe you make it 7,500 square feet for a single bonus, 10,000 square feet for double bonus, something like that.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters?
I got the impression that the staff comment was arguing that 10,000 square feet should be kind of the minimum for a usable space. I think. Although, I tend to think 7,500 might be usable too.
Yeah, Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Oh, I'm just not sure if, how it went from just being a single bonus to a double bonus, if it's the minimum usable space. I'm just not sure what the thought process or discussion was that led to that. I would just be curious to know.
Any insight on that one, Mr. Coleman?
Yeah, I'm gonna phone a friend on that one.
Okay, that's fair. So is there any hard over language, though, without that insight that council wants to see there? Because I heard 7,500, but I think really you need the question answered about the double bonus first. Okay.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
I'm hopeful that next week we could see the revision to the step back language so that we know what we're actually talking about agreeing to. I was in Tempe this weekend, a lot of new residential structures, 5 and 6 stories, and I noticed that many of them had horizontal articulation rather than vertical step backs, or horizontal step backs. So like rather than a flat front across the street, there was a come all the way out to the street and then come in 5 feet and over and out, rather than flat front up to the top level and then step back. I could see usefulness for both of those, although I don't really know what our current code says, which I think was the problem.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
I just have one more. Let's see, on page 97 of 111, which is also page 200 of our packet, we docketed a request to consider amending a mixed-use development to fulfill 100% of their required internal open space requirement with shared roof decks, but I don't see that as a planning commission recommendation. And I'm guessing that's because people don't necessarily want to just be on roofs for their, like, they might want indoor public space and not just want to be on roofs in inclement weather or even at all, who even knows? So I'm not seeing that as a planning commission recommendation, so I don't think it was one. I just wanted to confirm that. Or do we still have to look at it separately because it's on the docket?
So what you see in this, on page 97 would be what the recommendation is.
The in green, if you have a colored.
Oh,
version.
thank you.
Is that what that is, Mr. Coleman?
Yeah, the green is the new.
Okay, so I'm reading it as 50%, not 100.
Correct.
Okay,
And
great.
let's see, so that's. $1962,040. Yes, I don't see any changes to 1962-040 in the Planning Commission's recommendations.
Okay.
These are out of HAP or council
Thanks.
inputs. All right. Anything else? Again, I appreciate the work on this because we're trying to keep the timeline. Okay.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
We're proposing to change assisted living facility from conditional use in R3, R3A, the non-existent R3A. And R4A to permitted, R4 is already permitted. And in R3, it's got some conditions in that it's got to be 1,000 feet from another assisted living facility, and it's limited to only 10 units. Although those numbers are in brackets in the code, but they're not with ranges. So maybe they should not be in brackets. But I guess we're not choosing a number. Anyway, in the R4A zone, can you put the map back on the screen? Okay, so there's only that one little section of R4A, right? Where's the second one?
The two magenta areas.
West End.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so the R4A seems kind of close to the R3 in at least its location, or to lower residential zones, because the other R4A at the west end is not by R2. I was just wondering if we want to apply the standards for assisted living for R3 to R4A as well. So those standards are on page 49 of 111. And they only apply to R3. And they are a maximum of 10 units or beds per facility and separated from other assisted living facilities by a minimum of 1,000 feet. And then some standards about porte cochere and similar features for passenger loading and requirement for a traffic mitigation plan. That one little section of R4A by the ops facility is pretty much all built out, I think. So it probably doesn't really matter there.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini.
I don't have any problem with that. I just wonder for the assisted living, like if there will even be interest in building in that R4A spot, because it seems pretty far away from any kind of like serious infrastructure. Like, so I mean, we can do it. I don't have a problem with it. I just don't know if it's going to get utilized.
Yeah, does the definition of assisted living allow for residential context? Because it's like the West End R4A is very residentially.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini.
I was thinking more like things like banks and whatnot, because I have a lot of folks that come in from assisted living to get help at the bank. And so I just thought it's kind of far away from grocery stores, banks, services.
Ms. Cleveland McGrath.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking banks, but I was also just thinking about our EMS services and the need to have quick response times. That's using Station 3 pretty significantly. I don't see the benefit necessarily of doing it just for the West End out in Skyline. I think it's more beneficial and where as proposed.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
That argument leads me to think maybe we just shouldn't allow it in the R4A. Is that consistent? Yeah. Assisted living should be closer in to the core.
I think the idea was R4A is already sort of a higher density where you can have apartment-like structures, and assisted living tend to be multifamily type, at least in appearance.
So perhaps 5 years from now, somebody could convert something like that.
Yeah, or if there was they could, right now, under this change, from conditional, I mean, it's been conditional for a while, and so in the R4A, it would just be outright permitted. And the idea was it's in areas where you would already see multifamily buildings.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
I think that part of it makes sense, but on the other hand, what I think we always hear is that assisted living generates calls for service from EMS, and maybe, and so it's relatively expensive for us to provide service to, and maybe a mitigation for that would be to locate assisted living closer to the core, plus the banking thing. TJ is closer to assisted living in the core.
We do have existing assisted living facilities that are not in the core, as I'm sure you all are aware. So it wouldn't be a major deviation. But it's up to you, council. What do you want to do with this one? Ms. Cleland McGrath.
I mean, I'm inclined to remove it from R4A, remove R4A from this whole situation of assisted living. The only reason it's called R4A is because we have these pockets of higher density surrounded by lower density areas. It could even have a different residential zone, like R5, I don't know. But I think that the purpose of putting it, having the R4, even referencing the assisted living, is to have it in that downtown core where there is access, there's walkability, and the response times for our level of service when it comes to EMS is incredibly important, and we're seeing a lot of communities talk about how expensive it is. It's happening in Burlington, just had a new facility built, and they were not expecting the number of calls that they are having to respond to. So we need to be conscientious of that, knowing that that's a real change in the future.
All right.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini?
I would support that.
Okay. I'm seeing a lot of seconds on removing it from the R4A. All right. Again, good discussion, because we're going to try to bring it back in the form of a draft that we're going to ask you to adopt. And that is going to be, one more time, remind me when that's going to be?
So the plan was to have one final discussion on the 24th about this.
That's right.
So we'll try to bring as many as you can. We'll try to have all of these changes and any other changes that we see or need to happen, not really want at this point. So we'll bring those on the 24th, and perhaps council, you'll still have an option to add things to the list there, because you can do this as long as you like, but we're going to discourage
but we
that.
There was some good progress made, so I appreciate that. So, yeah, maybe I was getting a little ahead, so there's still a little time to work it. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Coleman. All right, item 7G, Resolution 3188, City Council Procedures, Discussion, Possible Action. Staff says this is a 15-minute-er. Ready to go?
Mayor Miller.
Was that Mr. McDougall? Or
I move to postpone this item.
All right.
Mayor Miller?
Ideally till January.
I would second that, but I might suggest a different strategy for the agenda next time, that maybe we put that 15-minute discussion as the first old business item, because otherwise I feel that we may just continue to.
Okay, the item is tabled, and we'll take that suggestion. No further action before the council. I'll adjourn tonight's meeting.